Okay, welcome everybody. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the council meeting for the 17th of May. Please join me in standing for the opening karakia.
Ki te uru, whakatake hau ki te tonga, kia mā ki tuta, kia mā taratara ki tai. E hia ki ana, te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, tihe, mahua.
And sorry, while we're standing, I'd just like to have a moment's silence for I'm thinking about the people up in Wellington, which is very sad. I feel bad for all our colleagues and the public up in Wellington. So we'll just reflect on that. There's still some people missing that they haven't found. Thank you. Thank you very much. Right. Apologies. I've got an apology from Yanni for partial attendance. He's going to pop out for a wee bit. Celeste is on Zoom and Aaron is on Zoom. Oh, hi. Pauline will move that and Mark will second it. Thank you very much. I've not received any declarations of interest, so we'll move on to item 3, public participation. We have no public forums this morning, but a few deputations. So for a starter, I'd like to invite Mark Rocket from Kia Aerospace to come up and present to us. Welcome, Mark. He's here to talk about item 6, the International Relations Policy Framework.
Yeah.
Good to see you again, bud.
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor, and councillors, esteemed group that we have here. Thank you for the opportunity to talk today. I'm wearing two hats. One, I'm the CEO of Kia Aerospace, and also I'm the President of Aerospace New Zealand / Aerospace Christchurch. So just talking about the travel that is planned and discussed at the moment. So from an industry perspective, I believe it's really important for the Mayor and elected members to travel to the US to build connections in Seattle. I was part of the trade delegation last year to Adelaide, and that was with Deputy Mayor Andrew Turner and Councillor Anne Galloway and a range of other people. This enabled us to meet the Governor and the Aerospace Hub at Lot 14 and a range of other connections. It opened up a dialogue at a much higher level than a lot of other business travel that I've been part of, so it was really useful. And I think it was really useful to give the City Council and Christchurch NZ staff an opportunity to see examples of strategic thinking and infrastructure investment in Australia. So I think getting that context, bringing those ideas back here to the city is very, very useful. The reality is that countries like Australia are investing a lot of money into high growth activities and sectors, and it is really hard for New Zealand to compete on some of those areas. So we do need to think really strategically how we can attract and develop businesses here. America holds a lot of interest for aerospace companies and a lot of opportunity for our city. In March, we had the administrators of NASA visit Christchurch. So we had the administrator and the deputy administrator of NASA. I mean, their budget is about $40 billion per year. So, you know, they've got pretty extensive budgets to tap into. And I'd love to see them to work with more companies in Christchurch and in New Zealand. You know, they're already working with companies such as Rocket Lab and Fabrum here in Christchurch. And yeah, I think there's a massive opportunity for us to engage and develop those sort of projects. And one strategic thing that the government has done is put $9 million into a fund where New Zealand companies can apply for that to use that funding. So it'd be fantastic to see some Christchurch companies be able to work with NASA in the aerospace capacity. So I think, you know, having the city's support for this emerging aerospace industry is important, and you know, I'd hope that this trip to the US would help develop those interesting connections. That's it.
Very, very good. Mark, did you have a question? Yep. And Jim?
Thank you, Mark. That was a great presentation. Would you be looking to join any delegation that was going to the US?
Yes, I would.
Excellent. Keep up the good work.
Thanks.
James?
Thanks, Mark, and good to see you. Do you think, from your experience with these, at a tangible level, do you think that these sorts of delegations and connections with these strategic centres make a tangible, positive difference to our businesses in Christchurch?
Yeah, well, you saw the administrator of NASA and deputy administrator get on the plane, come over to New Zealand, try and engage with New Zealand. So, I mean, I think that's an indication that they think it's pretty important. And yeah, I think, again, Adelaide was very successful just giving people of the city exposure to other ideas and other strategic thinking. We can bring these ideas back to the city. So I think the same thing will happen in the US. Seattle, our sister city Seattle over there, is a hotbed of aerospace activity. I think it could open up some really exciting opportunities where we can bring projects back. We can start connecting with some other entities over there. So yeah, I'd be very optimistic that we can, develop and forge those relationships.
Thank you.
Kelly?
Thanks, Mike. Great to see you. Just in terms of the budding aerospace industry in Christchurch, how many jobs do you know are sort of forecast to be filled in the next, or need to be filled in the next sort of year or so?
The next year or so, yeah, I'm not quite sure what the numbers there, but I mean, you look at Dawn Aerospace, they're growing fast. Kia, there's dozens of companies that are developing these high value, high tech jobs. So yeah, I mean, I'd say hundreds. I'm not sure the exact number, but what we're trying to do at Aerospace Christchurch / Aerospace New Zealand is attract people to set up businesses here. We've got a talent pool coming out of the University of Canterbury. We don't want them to go off and work in Auckland at Rocket Lab or offshore. We want them to basically build their talent and what they're doing here in this city. So ultimately, you would love to see dozens of successful aerospace companies operating out of this region, and that will obviously create many thousands of aerospace jobs.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions? No? All good? Thank you very much, Mark. Brilliant as usual. Thank you. So next we have Francis Sullivan from LGNZ, who will also speak about item 6. Thank you, Francis.
Good morning. Thank you. Abola, Talofa, Maloni, Kirana. There's a number of salutations that the Pacific TA program that I manage out of LGNZ ensures that I get to hear and use on a regular basis. So this program, Pacific TA, is a completely different lens of international relations to what you've just heard about. Pacific TA meaning Pacific Technical Assistance, and it's a Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade and MFAT funded program that provides for the exchange of knowledge and expertise between councils in New Zealand and organisations in the Pacific Islands who are doing the same work that councils do. Now, I say that because there's a range of partners that we have. They could be a ministry, they could be an infrastructure ministry, they could be a city council in the same way that we view a city. It might even be, for example, the Ministry of Police, who we work with in Samoa to introduce dog management. So the key is it's technical assistance, and it covers the ambit of work that councils in New Zealand are involved in, and a range of partners in the Pacific Island countries. The program's been running for about 10 years. We're about to embark on another 5 years of a contract with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade. The program is currently administered out of local government New Zealand, but it is moving over to Taitua Rā. The relationship between LGNZ and Taitua Rā will continue through the steering committee or the board for the program. So Taitua Rā being the officers' membership organisation for councils in New Zealand, LGNZ being the elected members side of it. The councils involved are both large and small. For example, the Far North District Council is about to go up to Kiribati, again on dog control. Dog control is a popular one. But it's really my role and our roles as people who are involved in it to ensure that we get, good, robust relationships with the partners that we're working with in the Pacific. And scale, obviously, can be one of those things that we think about in terms of who we're marrying up with each other. In February, the capital cities of Honiara City Council, Port Vila City Council, who were supposed to be here, and Suva City Council were here in Christchurch. Christchurch offers a really unique opportunity to showcase how the better build component of city development. The capital cities in the Pacific Islands are having significant urban growth challenges at the moment. They struggle somewhat a little bit with grappling with, putting together visions that they can hold on to and how to deliver that. But all of that needs to be bedded in with good technical expertise around CPTED, crime prevention through design, for example. And they really very much enjoyed their time here. They learned a lot about it. They spent a lot of time in and around the city and enjoyed walking around it. So why are we involved in this program? I guess that's as big a range of reasons as there are people that are involved in it. You could think about it from an economic perspective. Technical assistance providers or the advisors at our councils often make connections with the people that they're working with here in New Zealand, the businesses that they're working with here in New Zealand. There's obviously the geopolitical situation that people are looking to. It's a fantastic professional development for people in New Zealand. But really, for me, it broadens our understanding and our connectivity with Pacific partners, with Pacific Islands, with whānau from the Pacific. The connectivity, the social connections with the Pacific are quite deep and long-term, and so there are a lot of opportunities around that as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone got any questions? Tyrone, please.
Thank you. Yeah, really interesting. So are there any countries in the Pacific that you don't engage with, like the Francophone countries or dependencies of European countries or whatever? Yeah.
So the relationships are with countries that have what the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade calls bilateral relationships with New Zealand. So that does mean that we don't work with Tahiti or New Caledonia, for example, but we do work with other countries. The list is quite long.
Is there a list?
In my head there is, yes.
Okay.
We work with the Cook Islands, we work with Samoa, we would work with Tonga, but we haven't got anything active there at the moment. We would work with Niue. There's something in the background around Niue. We're actively involved in the moment with the Solomon Islands, with Fiji, with Vanuatu. We've done a little bit of work in Papua New Guinea, not in Port Moresby, but in Ley City Authority. So it's a reasonably extensive range of countries that we work in.
Thanks, Tyrone. Yanni, please.
Thank you for the work that you do. No doubt it's incredibly valuable. I'm just wondering, in terms of a city, if is LGNZ aware of city-to-city relationships with the Pacific? Are you aware that some councils do have those? And do you think, on top of the work that you're doing, to have some sort of relationship from the Pacific community in Christchurch with the Pacific community in the Pacific, if that would be something that you think we should be looking at as well? So complementary rather than, at the expense of.
Yeah, the one thing I did notice with the partners that were here in Christchurch in February were they were quite keen to look at sister city relationships. Now, that's not something that I engage in, but there are definitely opportunities there if you choose and you would want to do that sort of develop that relationship with them. From the program's perspective, it's very much about that relationship building, as I said, and that connectivity that takes you beyond the sister set of relationships and connects more into that community aspect that personally I think is quite unique to local government, because local government is the body that's closest to the community, and our communities are very linked at those levels, and we could certainly improve on that as well. Yeah.
Thank you. No other questions? Thank you very much, Francis, for making the effort to come in. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okie doke. Finally, I'd like to welcome Don Babe from Spokes, who is going to talk about some of the information shared in the climate portfolio report. Welcome, Don.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. One of the things I really want to talk about today is the divisions over the new cycle lane that have been put along Park Terrace, and it is linked into the climate change things. I'm not going to discuss the nuts and bolts of it, but I would like to look at a far bigger concern. We're seeing road space changes being described in words that are more provocative than necessary. We're not at war over these changes, and discussion about them is good for all interested parties. I've heard deputations like this one described as cyclists once again banging on about their cause. Yes, we do. We're advocates. We're also people that are members of society. And people just sort of think of cyclists as just them sort of thing. So just to humanise things, I'd like to look at some of the reasons why people cycle. We've got environmental warriors. So the news about the worsening changes to our climate has to be taken seriously. A number of cyclists will see their bike use as their small contribution to slow this process down. It can be argued that the efforts of each individual are too small to make much difference, but if enough people do something as radical as change their transportation choices, it will add up. Government seems content to push these issues down the road so the next elected lot can deal with it, but some people are doing their own thing with little help from governments. Then we've got fitness freaks. With a lot more people having sedentary jobs, exercise has become important. We see this in the number of gyms that seem to be popping up in buildings all over town. The best exercise is something that is done regularly, and bicycle journeys fit this criteria very well. Fun lovers. As Councillor Kewen mentioned last time I presented to you, cycling is fun. Apparently car drivers are amongst the least happy travellers in the world, so the opportunity to complete journeys in a better frame of mind is beneficial. Economy driven. The automobile has been calculating the total cost of car ownership for a number of years. When all factors like the interest either paid or foregone on the purchase price of the car is taken into account, the cost is over $10,000 per year per vehicle. This is money that is diverted from other uses and family budgets. A decent new bike can be purchased for around about $2,000 and will cost maybe $100 a year to keep it going. For a struggling family, this cost difference is significant. Then you've got the health conscious. This is connected with fitness people, but also covers those that don't push themselves on every ride, a little bit like me. The health benefits of regular biking are well documented. The best example I know of is that bike riders take on average 2 less sick days off per year. Then we've got the newly independent youngsters. Learning to ride a bike, then being trusted to make unaccompanied journeys are big moments in children's development. I hope you can all recall those sort of times when you were young. And along with that new bit of cycleway is along Park Terrace, there are 2 schools, so they are being serviced by it. So none of these above people are at war with owners or drivers of cars, and most of them will be owners and drivers themselves. They have just made the choice to ride on a particular day. Even worse, they do not want car drivers to be at war with them because it is a one-sided affair. So these people, they could be your mother, your brother, your niece, your grandchild, still lovely people that we need to look after as fellow human beings. As the chairperson of the local cycling advocacy group, I'm asking that we continue to have our discussions and probably disagreements, but that we do it in a manner that does not encourage people into camps that are at loggerheads with other camps. The recent newspaper articles have brought a lot of responses amongst the cycling fraternity. They are mostly in support of the new bits, which is not surprising. I actually went and had a look at it this morning. I don't pass there very often, but it is a very nice facility, and it was very, very crowded. Some of the reasons why they were supportive were a bit surprising. One of the comments was the shared path and the path through the park that were existing before the new bit was put in do not feel safe after dark, particularly to women. Now, I can't comment on that because I'm not a woman, but they have a different way of looking at things. The shared path that has been in front of the museum for a number of years has become too crowded to function well for either pedestrians or cyclists. This happens with any sort of shared facility. As you develop, it doesn't work for either of them. Cycling on the road in the old times, in front of the museum with cars or small buses parked there, meant cyclists were close to the fearsome tram tracks. Even experienced riders report falls with this hazard. If the shared path beside the road is used all the way to Carlton Mill, the footpath crossing of Harper Avenue has a very small waiting area and feels very exposed with a solid bridge behind if a vehicle does go amok. The shared path nearest the road is under specification for a shared path, which makes it awkward for traffic encounters like baby buggies and cargo bikes meeting or wanting to pass. Finally, coming back to climate change. So looking at that emergency that the council declared a couple of years ago. If we'd have any hope of meeting our obligations both as a city or as a nation, both total vehicle kilometres travelled has to reduce from what is expected by 2030. That is not as bad as it sounds because the expected total by then is higher than what we are doing now. That means if we can slow down or even stop the growth in VKT now, reaching the target will become easier. Every year we leave it and have a higher total to reduce from, the more drastic the actions will need to be. Rather than mandating carless days, we're better to chip away at the appeal of car transport versus alternative over the next few years. Narrower streets, lower speeds, less parking and higher costs are sticks that get people that are using cars to consider alternatives. Like all sticks, there will be some that resent their use more than others and will do whatever they can to preserve the status quo. By declaring an emergency, the council has said that the status quo is like arranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. Thank you.
Okay, have we got any questions for Don? Tyrone, please.
Thanks, Don. You missed a couple of reasons why people bike, I think. Because it's incredibly convenient and practical, which is probably the main reason that I do it. Mm-hmm. I can bike, into the city in about 10 minutes and just whiz past all the cars just backed up along wherever they're backed up along. It's a way better way of feeling connected with our incredible city, and you just get such a great sense of all the beautiful, wonderful things we have in Christchurch when you're actually out on your bike and observing it and listening. So do you agree?
Definitely.
Oh,
I have to frame it as a question, you see.
Thanks, Tyrone. Anyone else like to have a wee comment? Yanni, please.
Yeah, thank you. I was just wondering, your comments around the shared path. Do you think we need to kind of revise our infrastructure design standards and look at actually the use of shared paths, given the concerns that have been expressed? Because we've heard both from the disability sector and from others around the concern of just the conflict that's been created with the various types of people not using cars, but using those sorts of paths.
Yes, shared paths are always a compromise, and I often go to the walking and cycling conference, and it's quite noticeably, walkers don't want cyclists on their paths, and if you've got elderly people, they don't feel very comfortable walking on a shared path, and once as they stop walking, their health goes down quite quickly. So, we need to be providing for these people. We've also got people that are blind and things like that, so we need to have facilities for them. I don't mind using shared paths because I don't mind going a little bit slower, but we do get people that want to complete their journeys very quickly and they want to be able to do 30 k's an hour on their bike the whole way. And so they're frustrated by having to weave between people. They are a cheap way of getting things done, but if they are successful, they don't actually work for either party particularly well.
Okay, Tim?
With regards to human behaviour, shared paths and just humans giving a wee bit, do you think it's a reflection on society at the moment that everyone's a wee bit selfish? You look at our driver behaviour is pretty appalling, but bike behaviour would be in the same category. Just because someone's on a bike and they're flying along, you look at a shared path with a family with little children, the same issue on a road as a path. Children do what they do.
Yeah, and my comment's always been, just because you put a person on a bike with a helmet doesn't make them an angel. You've still got idiots in the society that do either or. So yes, you're right.
Okay, that's taken us right to the time limit. Thank you very much for coming in. Well done. Okay. We now have moved to item 4, presentation of petitions. The Copper Ridge residents have requested that their petition against the Kaiangiora Estate housing development in Hallswell be received by council at today's meeting. As none of the residents are able to be here to present the petition, the minutes will note that it has been tabled and received. Okie dokie. Righto, so supplementary reports. Before we can get into our staff reports, I've got a few supplementary items for inclusion in today's meeting. Can I have a mover, Tim, and a seconder, Yanni?
Question.
Oh, a question? Well, here's a surprise.
Yeah, thanks. So, we have fairly regular council meetings. Why have these ones, and particularly I'm concerned about 17, because the climate one was, a day after the agenda came out, so I understand that. But why is the Northern Line being added in less than a day's notice to us as councillors to the agenda? Why couldn't it come to the next council meeting to give people, adequate time to understand, read it, submit questions, etc.?
The Northern Line report is the legalisation of the scheme that has already been approved. So it is literally just the legal requirements for the lines and signs for the scheme that was approved previously. Part of the reason it has come really, really late has been because we have got an unexpected window of time to do some work with KiwiRail that we weren't anticipating. The team have had to whip this through. There is no changes from the scheme that was approved, and as such, it is low significance in a report.
Thank you, Lynette.
Sorry, can I just check, what's the time frame? Why can't it come to the next meeting?
We've got an opening with KiwiRail in early June.
You spoke about this yesterday. Yeah.
And I think it might be good when we get the rationale for the late supplementaries that we do get a little bit more detail, because if you read it, just to say the report wasn't ready, I don't think gives us a really clear understanding of the need for urgency. And we should be mindful of the fact that our community, they may wish to make deputations on some of these items, and so to get at late notice means it's very hard for them as well.
We can put a note to that effect, Councillor Johansson.
Thank you. And then we got item 18, my report. Yeah, I haven't got the second. Sam's just finished seconding it, and I'm just still reading out what we're supplementing. And the PX item 20 on Hallswell Junction Road update. So I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Against? Thank you. We now move on to item 5, a Part A report from the Fenelton Waimari Harewood Community Board, and we have got Gemma and Stephen, please.
Right, so just quick introduction. The Community Board have approved the majority of the scheme. We're just here for the traffic signals and the cycle lanes.
That's one of the quickest updates I've ever had.
Sorry, I just assumed the report's been read.
Sarah's happy to move it, and Melanie is happy to second it. So any questions, any debate? I'll put the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Thank you, Kerry.
Aye.
Right, Tim, what's the name? Aaron. Okie dokie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for waiting. Number 6, International Relations Policy Framework update.
I'm happy to second it.
Second it? Who's moving?
I'll move it if you want. So I'm not on any of the committees, so I'm neutral.
Ina mana, ina rau, I rau rangatira mā, tēnā koutou katoa. Firstly, I'd like to express my thanks to Mark Rocket and Francis Sullivan for taking their time to come and speak to you this morning. Certainly, we as staff in the Civic and International Relations team appreciate their collaborative spirit with respect to international outreach for the city, and in turn, we are genuine in our desire to try and assist them. Councillors, the report before you today is twofold. Firstly, is reporting back to you on progress related to the International Relations Policy Framework. From here on in, I'll refer to that as the IRPF, including key measures we have prepared to monitor the outcomes of the partnerships and the approach to fostering connections with South Pacific nations to provide support for resilience and development. Second is to seek approval for the Mayor and a small number of elected members commensurate with the appropriate visit within the financial authority to travel in support of significant sister city anniversaries and the IRPF. The report details 4 key measures we have prepared to monitor the outcomes of the partnerships identified in the IRPF. Firstly, to deliver targeted city visits to each partnership destination through to the end of the triennium. This is consistent with the IRPF's vision, priorities and principles. A visit to Adelaide has already happened last year, and it is intended for visits to happen to the Western United States in July, Korea and Japan in September, and China in the second half of next year. Additionally, we have tentatively scheduled a visit to Brisbane in October of this year to attend the Asia Pacific Cities Summit. This measure is assessed as being green and on track. Secondly, is to deliver ongoing work plans in each citywide partnership destination through to the end of the triennium. Some detail of each of these plans is contained in the paper, but suffice to say that we are maintaining a pipeline of activity in each IRPF destination alongside our existing civic and international relations work. This is also assessed as green and on track. Thirdly is growing the International Relations City Stakeholders Group as a platform for sharing citywide international activity, noting that we have increased the size of this group by 3 in the past 12 months. This is also assessed as being green and on track. And then finally, it is, as you heard from Francis, collaborating with LGNZ and later Taitura in providing technical expertise to the South Pacific region. This measure details what we are doing to support the resilience and development of nations in the South Pacific, and we are excited to establish a win-win partnership that will further the goals of that program, as well as increase and coordinate our activity as a council in the South Pacific. This one is assessed as amber and requiring further development. The COVID-19 pandemic has seen a restriction on travel that has prevented face-to-face engagement with our sister cities and other international partners for an extended period. Now, with the reopening of the borders, it's imperative for Christchurch to prioritise travel in order to honour its international relationships and to grow its status as a leading New Zealand city that is internationally relevant. In an international context, the Mayor and councillors are diplomatic assets for the city at large. Deployment can facilitate access to partners and to decision makers that may otherwise be difficult for city stakeholders to achieve in isolation, and indeed you heard Mark Rocket refer to that in his deputation. We have identified a number of visits for the Mayor, supported by appropriate councillors, to undertake between now and the end of the triennium. Where possible, we have linked these visits to other engagements in order to minimise the time away whilst maximising the efficiency. 2021 saw the 40th anniversary of our sister city relationship with Seattle. 2023 is the first opportunity we have to have a face-to-face commemoration of that relationship. In February, we hosted a delegation from Seattle to our city, and we are now well into the planning to send a return delegation to Seattle. While we are there, we are planning to conduct a business delegation to visit Seattle, Denver, and California. An opportunity has presented itself for the Mayor to visit North Asia at the end of September and early October of this year. This visit will be anchored on attendance at the World Cities Summit being held in Seoul. The intention would be to then include a visit to Incheon and Songpa-gu whilst the Mayor was in Seoul, and then travel on to Japan. The visit to Japan would coincide with the Kurashiki Sister City Committee's Citizens Delegation that will be in Kurashiki at that time to commemorate the 50th anniversary of that relationship. And that is ahead of a inbound delegation that we will receive from Kurashiki to celebrate the relationship in November. While in Japan, it's also proposed that the Mayor will go and visit the city of Toyama. This is a city where the majority of the young Japanese victims who were tragically killed in the CTV collapse hailed from, and the intention would be for the Mayor to go and visit the bereaved families up there to remind them that we as a city have not forgotten them or their loved ones who, in many cases, remain here in Christchurch. Then Q3 2024 is the time that we have identified as appropriate to conduct a visit to China. The focus will be on Guangdong Province, that is the cities of Guangzhou and Shenzhen, where the focus will be on business. And then moving on to visits to Wuhan and Gansu Province, where the focus will be on education and on the sister city dimension to the relationship. Other destinations in China will be investigated in due course. The indicative costs for the travel are in part 7 of the report, noting that this is the cost in there is for the Mayor and 1 councillor. Following subsequent consideration, Schedule 1 provides the figures for 3 elected members to travel at council expense for each visit, noting that the figure for China is actually 5.5k more than what is required, so I just draw your attention to that. Preference will be given to those councillors who serve on the sister city committees and who are available to support the Mayor at the time of the visit. Now, in summary, the International Relations Policy Framework has been developed to be in close alignment with the Council's own strategic framework. For instance, the Council's prosperous economy community outcome is reflected in the strategy's priority of pursuing well-being through a prosperous economy. It also embodies the principle of actively collaborating and cooperating with other local, regional, and national organisations, which is aligned to the strategic priority of championing Christchurch and collaborating to build our role as a leading New Zealand city. On the one hand, though the costs with the international travel as set out in the briefing in the paper are comparatively modest, the decision by the Mayor and councillors to undertake council-funded travel at a time of fiscal prudence could be viewed as counterproductive. On the other hand, since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, city travel has been limited to a level that is lower than at any other time in recent memory. This means that the cost related to international travel, and indeed to international relations more broadly, over the same period have been extremely low. International engagement is worth a lot to the city in economic terms. To give a couple of examples, prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, Antarctic-related activities made an annual contribution of $235 million to the Canterbury economy. Further, visitor spend in Christchurch and the wider South Island from a daily wide-body aircraft was estimated at $157 million annually. Our international engagement has significantly contributed to each of these activities. It is therefore justifiable and indeed important for the Council to make a modest level of investment in a strategic international travel schedule that supports such connections. Should Council be unwilling to commit to an international travel schedule, then it would face a reputational risk. The risk is twofold: that there is both a likely perception from international partners that Christchurch is uncommitted to its international relationships, and the perception with our own city ecosystem that Council is unwilling to champion Christchurch internationally and undertake collaborative leadership as set out as a responsibility in the IRPF. Further, there is also a broader strategic risk to Christchurch of missing out on opportunities that could be acquired through visitation or lose important connections due to the actions of other cities. This is especially the case in a post-COVID environment where cities around the world are reinvigorating their appetite for international connection and partnerships. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Now, I have Tim's happy to move it and Kelly's happy to second it, and Mark has got a question.
Thank you. Duncan, just picking up on the LGNZ deputation, do we as a city have any sister city relationships with any Pacific nations?
No, we don't.
And is that something that we'd perhaps look to investigate?
Our recommendation on what we have seen and in our discussions with LGNZ on that Pacific TA program would be no, because that would then restrict us to one area where we assess that we could provide good to a lot of areas if we partner with LGNZ in that Pacific TA program.
Very good. And another point I want to pick up on as well, the Antarctic program was mentioned, and do you see this paper today as being vital to continuing and securing that relationship?
Certainly the visits that we have planned do play a role in maintaining our Antarctic partnerships with, in particular, the US and Korea. So whilst in Korea, that visit to Incheon, the primary purpose of that would be to visit the Korea Polar Research Institute, which is headquartered there, and we know that mayoral engagement at that level is extremely valuable. When we're in the United States, we will see what we can do with regards to visiting McCord Air Force Base, which is where the heavy jets of the US Air Force are based that support the Antarctic program. Thanks.
Yanni.
Yeah. Thank you for the work that you've been doing. I just wanted to chat on the Pacific Islands work. Are we going to get like a formal report back on what the options are based on the previous resolution where we've asked for that advice? Because I guess I hear what you're saying around the sister city relationship, but I do think it's important that we have some mechanism of engaging with the Pacific communities within Christchurch to also see, what best we could do. Obviously being mindful that they've played a huge role in supporting us when we've had our disasters and our tragedies that we've faced over the past decade. So it would be really nice to just work with those communities locally to find out, what approach they would also like us to consider. And so is there a chance for us to get a report back on what the various options are, recognising that the LGNZ stuff is already happening?
There was no intention to bring a separate report on that. The information that is contained in this report was assessed by us as fulfilling that resolution. And after careful assessment of a variety of options, which included quite a lot of consultation with stakeholders around the city, it was assessed that joining the Pacific TA was the most efficient way for the city to be able to engage with the South Pacific to fulfill that resolution, especially since it's at no cost. It's at no direct cost to council. It's at indirect cost in time, but not in money.
So can I move an additional resolution that we do seek a report back to formalise the direction? I just think as councillors, certainly as the councillor who was keen to put this into our framework, that we should actually have a report on the various options of what we do and what resource may be required to support it.
Okay, and you're happy to second that, Mark? Okay, right.
Happy if staff can just take that direction from the discussion rather than a formal resolution. I mean, we've already got a resolution to provide that advice. It's could just be a note or an action from the...
Thank you, Yannick, that's good. So we've got the noting matter, we've finished with questions. Is there any debate? Timothy.
Yeah, thank you. Look, I just think these links are so important. You've just heard with NASA coming over. This is an organisation with a $40 billion budget to allow our companies to connect and then through their professionalism build those over time is absolutely essential. And I know through personal experience when I worked here, through the Sister Cities Seattle connection, when we were doing the Some Rock, the true big concerts, the guy that discovered Nirvana and his record label, the first to sign them up, came here and we personally met with him and started those links. And you can imagine, if we're talking economic, music is money, but more importantly, if you're talking culture, these two things are amazing. And sadly, at this table, it kind of fell over, but that's another story. But the links were made and they were so important. And I guess if we're talking culture, one of the things that's certainly on many people's minds is with looking at, say, North America or England or Australia, why are there so few road cones and yet you come here and there are so many? So that would be a really good kind of question to ask as our councillors and our staff go and visit and on their subsequent reports on their returns. So thank you, I'm fully in support.
Thank you very much. Any other debate? I'll put the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Duncan and Jack. Right, number 7, Greater Christchurch Urban Growth Programme, Christchurch Spatial Plan. Sarah and Mark.
And Tracy.
And Tracy. And John. And not Mark. Oh, there he is.
Sorry, there's been a change of presenters, so it's Richard Osborne, Tracy Turney, and myself.
I thought so.
We're just gathering Richard. He's just popped out of the room.
Just go and find him. He's
There
hiding
he is
out
now.
the back. There he is. Ta-da.
Which door?
Apologies.
You're right.
Okay, I'll just briefly introduce Richard and Tracy. So Tracy Turney from the Greater Christchurch Partnership and Richard Osborne from Wakakatahi. So as you're aware, this is a joint effort between the Greater Christchurch Council and our central government partners as well. So we're here for both item 7, the Greater Christchurch Spatial Plan, and item 8, the Mass Rapid Transit. We'll cover them both because they're an integrated program as part of the Greater Christchurch Partnership. You're being asked to endorse the Greater Christchurch Spatial Plan for a formal consultation and hearing process, as well as item 8, the Mass Rapid Transit indicative business case, and further work on the detailed business case. We're going to take the reports as read because there's been briefings and several councillors and the Mayor are on the Greater Christchurch Partnership. So we're happy to take questions now before considering the recommendations.
Thank you very much. That's good. Yes, we've been briefed to the moon and back on this one. So question, Tim, and then Pauline.
Thank you. It's interagency included. Are Kiwi Rail involved in this as well? Just asking.
Kiwi Rail do not sit on the Greater Christchurch Partnership or the Whakawhanaka Kāinga Committee. However, we have met with...
You've just switched him off. I just switched you off.
Was I saying something wrong?
Yeah.
However, we have met with them and discussed this with them.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Pauline?
Thanks. Nice to see you, Richard, and Tracy, and John. To me, it's you could call it a chicken and an egg with the transport and the spatial planning, but I think, and I like your comment on this, shouldn't the transport plan be the number one and everything else fit into that? The MRT should come first.
We can both answer that question.
Okay, go.
I think it's an integrated package of they both go together, and they're very important to complement each other. You know, for example, the housing intensification and the transport as well. So I'll let Richard add to that.
I'll just say the same thing.
Well, I know, but then we'll look at PC14. I mean, we've got carte blanche intensification is what they're wanting, whereas surely we want it just along the MRT for a start.
Certainly the decision on for consultation, public notification for PC14 was trying to target that intensification more along those transport corridors and centres, which is in alignment.
But why should we be trying to do that when it should be a no-brainer? I'm a bit puzzled about this.
Well, we were given direction from the government. We've done the best we can with that direction. I think the councillors here and staff have made some good progress with that direction.
Yeah, I'm just a little bit mystified that, you know, where's the teeth in it all, that's the thing. Thank you.
Tyler. Okay, who isn't even on the list? Okay.
Yeah, he didn't see me. I was just going to say, isn't it true that MRT globally is a huge inducement to densify around its corridor, essentially?
Very much so. Look, we often refer to the MRT project as a city shaping project rather than a transport project, and it only works if you get growth and intensification along the route and around the stations, and because that will, one, support the huge investment that's required to get this off the ground, but that will also result in an increase in patronage for those people who live adjacent to the route. So you're right. There's many ways you can encourage growth in particular areas. You have regulatory controls such as MDRS, but then you have lead infrastructure as well. And this is an example of lead infrastructure whereby with a permissive regulatory regime as well as this, what you're likely to see in years ahead, if indeed this is built, would be significant growth along that route and around the stations predominantly as well.
Just to add to what Richard was saying is some of the implementation work that's coming out of the spatial plan will be looking at not just the regulatory mechanisms but the non-regulatory mechanisms to encourage growth to support MRT as well. So it's not just regulatory, there's non-regulatory mechanisms as well that we can look at.
Okay, Tyler?
Kia ora. That was it's really exciting to see all of this, and it's also it makes me nervous too for the future. I've just got a couple of questions around the T's and C's, and I've got questions around the hearings panel. Who historically have sat on those kinds of hearings panels in the past?
I'm getting an issue with my on off button. Thank you. So in terms of the hearings panel, so it's a local government hearings panel, so it's not an RMA type, so it's similar to the hearings that are run for annual plan and long-term plan. So there's not anything that dictates the makeup, but that was considered by the Whakawhanako Committee in terms of how do you get a good representation of the community and of the partners. And also with that independent chair, just somebody who can hold the process and provide that guidance and support.
Sure. And in the past, have there been young people sitting on those hearings panels?
This is the first spatial plan that's been developed, so can't speak for past other local government processes.
Would it be beneficial for young people to be on said hearings panel?
So that was considered by the senior officials group in terms of that had been raised in terms of that youth voice because it had been so successful in part of the hui hui mai getting that voice heard. Yeah. The consideration was one of the risks around that is for that it's quite a lot to put on a young person's shoulders, and who would that young person be representing? So would they be wearing many hats? So we considered how could we get, we had such meaningful input into engagement, what's a better way of getting meaningful engagement in the hearings process to actually influence decision making? And so where as part of the recommendations of Whakawhanake was included a specific one around tailoring support for youth to engage in the submission process. So we're actually working with that connection group already who are really excited about how can we actually provide support to keep that voice going through. So we felt that was probably a greater way of getting that influence into the decision-making panel rather than appointing someone specifically.
Okay.
But ultimately, that was a decision of the Whakawhanake Committee.
Okay. Going back to the things that are talked about in the hearings, is there usually question time for those panellists to ask questions to those submitters?
That'll be up to the panel to decide how they'd like to run it, but it'll be very usual, similar to the way you run annual plans, where people get a time to speak and then panel gets a time to ask questions.
Okay, I guess that's where I'm trying to get at a little bit. Is it's really valuable for a youth voice to ask those questions that relate to them. It's really important that they're at every single level of this. I know there's other people that need representation, but in regards to this, looking at it into the future, it's going to be affecting our young people the most. So what I was actually hoping is for staff to provide advice on the addition of youth representation on the GCP Spatial Hearings Panel. I would love actually some advice on that. Dawn, I don't know where that sort of slots in.
Yeah, we can look at that.
It's the only reason why I just want to just chuck that in, knowing that it's going to be affecting them the most out of anybody in this room.
So we've got Yanni, Aaron, Mark, Sarah.
Yeah, I just this won't be a unfamiliar question, but I'm still trying to understand what we're going to do different as part of this spatial plan compared to the urban development strategy, which had some really good actions around things like affordable housing and environmental protections around things like neighbourhood amenity. And, so it supported intensification and more density, but it did so on the basis of a number of environmental and social actions, which largely don't seem to have occurred. What are we doing to address the social and the environmental impacts of just rezoning more land and allowing more land to be converted into more housing, so that things like housing affordability and environmental amenity get addressed?
So as part of the spatial plan, there are priority areas that are identified, and there's actions in terms of implementation coming out of that. Those types of issues will be considered through that further work, and councillors will be involved in some of that work as well, as we look to implement some of these actions, and they will address those social and environmental type concerns that you're raising.
So is this on page 69, where it just, it's got a number of priority areas, joint housing action plan, but there's no, the timing just says ongoing, to be determined, short term. It doesn't allocate any resources to achieving it. It doesn't give any key milestones. Is that all we've got to go on?
Yeah. So in terms of that strategic level, so it's going through that process, sitting at a high level, going, what do we want to achieve, what does success look like? Then it will come down to the Whakawhanaka and GCP to develop that work program. So there's already work going underway to say, well, we've, without presupposing how the final plan will get adopted, but saying that the directions are, as you point out, not dissimilar. Can we start thinking about those action plans and exactly that? How are we going to do this? Who's going to do it? And what's the resourcing requirements? Because all the partners are then going to want to consider how they can contribute and what they can do with that.
So when sorry, just to be clear, when are we going to get that information?
So in terms of implementation of the spatial plan?
Yeah.
So it'll go through to adoption. So there's a process for that to go through and be heard before it becomes the strategy. And then, of course, we sit and say we want to confirm the implementation plan. I guess what I'm saying is that we're not necessarily waiting, because as you point out, the work around social and affordable housing has already been part of that work program, but it's saying how do we progress that more effectively now, and what can we do around that with the partners' input and resources that we have available.
It's been repeatedly delayed. We've repeatedly been waiting for that work. It was supposed to go into the last round of LTPs and district plan reviews that the councils have done, and it didn't happen.
That's affordable housing you're talking about, that component.
So, can we get, how can the community make submissions to this process if they don't see the resources are required and the milestones that we're trying to achieve? I guess that's the concern. How does the community give feedback on what our priorities are if they can't see the cost of delivering and the time frame of delivering?
I think that's a really valid point. I think that discussion comes forward in terms of the partner organisations when they consider the levers that they have from the spatial plan direction to then give effect to it through their own funding and own annual plans and long-term plans, because that may well look slightly different for each authority. So that will be, so if we've got input into strategic direction, have we got that right? And hui mai indicates that that is the right direction. And then it's, as you point out, how does that actually mean on the ground in terms of the investments and decisions to be made, which will sit with each partner.
Right. And we are sort of looking at those types of questions now with the long-term plan and also the Otatahi Christchurch plan as well. So we're looking at getting on the front foot, but we do have to wait for this process to go
Good
through
answer.
its course.
Thank you. Aaron? Aaron? Yep.
Yeah, hi, sorry. My questions are just around the MRT, and there's a bit of a follow-on from Pauline's because of the Plan Change 14, that really should only allow building along there, along that route. And I think from earlier presentations I've seen on rail, it's a 400-metre walk. Is that what we say people will walk to a train? Yes? Rail? Or is it less?
I think what Councillor Cohen is referring to is the walkable catchment for the public transport qualifying matter and centres, etc. Yep. So that's part of PC 14.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the the numbers for ours. How many kilometres long is our one? Is it 22? 22. Yeah, and we compared to Sydney, and theirs is 24 kilometres, and they have, as Sydney has a population density of 8,000 per square kilometre, we're 280. They get 70,000 trips daily of people on it, and we're estimating 15,000 trips daily. Has someone done this modelling to work out how many people will actually be on that network? So I've used the Sydney one. It is good.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yep, there has been a significant amount of modelling being done that has been peer reviewed by independents. So that all that work has been done, and that all sits within the business case or the appendices, that's all good. In terms of the 22-kilometre route, that is the entirety of it, and the proposal in the business case is to stage it. And stage one is really around the corridor which runs between Church Corner in the southwest, through the central city and up to Papanui Northlands in the first instance. And then there is further work that needs to be done in places like Hornby in particular, where there are some constraints that we would need to work through, probably through a master planning exercise, before the MRT system would be extended out there and to Belfast in the north. So while the entire length of the route is 22 kilometres, the first stage of that is significantly less than that.
So my only other question would be, and thank you for that explanation, Richard, that all makes perfect sense if we were doing it, is how many other cities in the world, similar Western cities, have a population density close to ours that have light rail? Right, what are the examples? I'll be quite keen to look at theirs, where it's been successful and stuff.
I can't answer that question off the top of my head, but I was recently in the Gold Coast, and they have got a system over there which is not dissimilar to what we're considering here. And I think their population is also not dissimilar. So the benefit for Greater Christchurch, as we see it, is that we're not in the same situation potentially as other parts of the country or other parts of the world where we're trying to retrofit this into an area where there has already been significant growth and intensification. The benefit of this is that we can try and get ahead of the game and plan for the future in a manner that kind of supports your regulatory regime that you're considering through MDRS and other plan changes, but also encourages growth and intensification along that route as well via that kind of lead infrastructure that I referred to earlier on. So it's it is a different situation to other parts of New Zealand or other parts of the world, but we think the time is right to do the planning and to continue to do the planning with a view to implementation, 5+ years from now.
Right. Yeah. Gold Coast is a similar population. They're 500,000, but their population density is 485, so almost double ours. But where their route is along there, I've been and caught that one. It's beautiful. It's actually a really nice, a great bit of kit. It's surrounded by up to 30, 40-story apartment blocks down through, through the main area of Surfers Paradise and stuff. Like, there's a lot of people living or staying very close to that line, and even their units aren't full when that goes down the. I mean, it's nice to catch, but so that's my questioning is around. Can we see this remotely stacking up?
Look, and it's a good question, but the work that we've done, and it is in the report, shows that the preferred way forward could return between $1.1 and $2.8 of benefits for each dollar invested. So the business case is pretty clear that this has got potential to take through to the next phase, and that the benefit cost ratio associated with this project indicates very favourable returns for a project of this scope and size.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Mark, please.
Thank you. Thank you for this presentation. I'm, as the local councillor of Hornby, interested in your mention of a master plan. I think that's vital to this process to make sure that we have this well planned and well thought out. So thank you for that. Also a little nervous around timing regards to MRT. We're talking, I've heard 10 to 15 years before it gets out to the Hornby corner. And I'm nervous that too much intensification might land too early for the MRT to catch up and meet the demand for transport. So have there been much thought put into the idea of fast tracking the MRT to a point where it might be there before the intensification lands to actually take the population as they land?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Councillor. And look, we are aware of those issues around Hornby, and that's why the business case does recommend a master planning or program business case type exercise to take a kind of a holistic look at the area and recommend a range of interventions. So I think that work can start if the business case is endorsed and we do get funding to go to the next stage. We feel that work around a Hornby master plan can start reasonably soon. Yep. It is subject to funding though, and I don't have a strong sense of how long that might take, but there's nothing to stop us doing that in parallel with the detailed business case. So whilst you're kind of honing in on the route, making sure that all stacks up and doing your detailed design and other such things, you could also be running in parallel a master planning type exercise alongside of that. So, when you hit that delivery date, you are better placed to know what challenges you have in Hornby. Well, we can all probably guess as to what some of those are, but and more importantly, what you're going to do about them.
Yep.
So that's the way we see it playing out. Yep. We're yet to do all of that work in terms of next steps, and that's if the indicative business case is endorsed, that's what we'd work out over the second part of this year, and probably come back and update you as to what the work streams all are. There are recommendations in the business case, but we need to flesh those out a bit.
Excellent. And I guess to add to your reply there, you'll be pleased to know that one of our community board priorities that was passed just last week was to work on a Hornby master plan. So
right,
we're thinking alike.
We're aligned. Sarah, thank you.
Thanks. Just following on from Tyler's point about youth representation, the Whakawhanake Kāinga Committee is meeting again ahead of the hearings panel sort of meeting and doing its work. So is there opportunity for them to actually just get a bit of further advice and actually look at that?
So it isn't planned for the Whakawhanake to meet again. That meet at the end of the year once the hearings panel was coming back with its recommendations had been the plan. which is why in this report that issue was canvassed and the recommendation put forward around the composition of the panel.
Yeah. So just that, you know, Tyler's point about it's not just about having input into the panel, but it's having a member that can then ask the questions of other submitters. And I'm not quite sure if that particular way of engaging was canvassed. And I know that you've said, you know, a lot to put on a young person, but we look at, you know, the Mayor of Gore's 24. That still would meet a youth criteria.
I don't think it was, a direction had been to consider it. It was kind of seriously considered and actually spoke to the youth input as well about what they felt would be appropriate,
Okay.
which was around getting a plan to actually pick up on the hui hui mai work and go, now's the next opportunity to influence decision making, because we're aware that can be quite an intimidating process. So actually trying to say, how do we get a groundswell of people then, youth, participating in that process. And I think also assisting the hearings panel chair, because they'll be looking at all the background documentation and that youth impact. And I would anticipate, certainly I'd be encouraging them to think about how they run the hearings panel and how they do that process to make that as engaging for youth as possible. So there are different ways you could do that. And I think that's back to the question around, are we going to give time to question how might we run that differently for youth? So I think there's quite a bit of flex in how to run the hearing.
Yeah, and we can make sure that we've talked to our hearings panel representative about doing all of that as well. Yeah.
And maybe we could put it in a location that may be easier or less intimidating than a chamber. So I think the hearing panel has got scope to say, how could we make this engaging?
Thanks.
Okay, Celeste, did you have your hand up? I think I saw it. She's not there? All right, okay. Andre, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just following on from Pauline's question, which is around shouldn't we be focusing on a mass rapid transit route for other areas? Now, Council is asking for a qualifying matter along this exact route, which is around the Rickenbush area. So it's 250 properties, which would be a qualifying matter from intensification. And the argument Council is putting forward is that the current 2-storey properties near the bush do not jeopardise the bush, but that 3 stories would jeopardise the bush. So we're talking 250 properties on this mass rapid transit route. Now this wasn't put forward by government, it was put forward by Council. I guess just my question here is, do you have any comment on the consistency with that kind of qualifying matter and what we are talking about here today, which is the viability of a mass rapid transit route
There's
and its viability?
Yeah, so there will be some intensification within those 250 houses. Yep. The qualifying matter limits the height, but not having multi-units on those properties.
Yeah.
So you could still have, say, 4 or 5 multi units on a particular site. So there is potential for some intensification. There's going to be cases like this where qualifying matters restrict intensification for other reasons. There's hazard constraints, there's this one's about Rickenbush, and there's various other matters as qualifying matters as well. So that will sort of be some inconsistency amongst them sometimes.
Okay, great, thank you.
But it is a relatively small section too of Rickenbush Road.
Yep. Yep. But is Council also not sort of, trying to restrict intensification, well, across Christchurch in general, with a number of different qualifying matters, including this mass rapid transit system? So,
yeah, sometimes there will be some competing differences
Yeah.
there, but obviously that one will be hotly contested during the independent hearings panel process.
Okay. That makes sense.
So it'll be thoroughly thrashed out through that process.
Cool, thank you.
Jake, did you have one?
I'm actually good now.
You're done? Okay, Tyrone.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Kia ora. So just looking at the sort of the southeast and sort of just specifically, let's talk about Littleton. It's the number 1 port in the South Island. It's getting increasing volumes of cruise ship passengers, and it's been a bit of a schmozzle this summer in managing those. So, I mean, what sort of, the port's not going anywhere. The freight's increasing, I guess. So, those high volume sort of routes and you really can't get to Littleton without getting into a vehicle. I mean, you can go by bike, but you know, only Kelly's probably fit enough in this room to be able to do that. So what sort of considerations are sort of given there, and sort of how do you sort of see that playing out?
So obviously it's not on the mass rapid transit route, but there will always be considerations of public transport to and from Littleton. It's not a priority area either in terms of the spatial plan, so it will just fall into the normal sort of considerations for public transport.
Just if I could perhaps add that MRT is part of a wider kind of business case process, and the broader business case is, we call it PT Futures Combined Business Case, which is a bit of a mouthful, but that's really about getting our existing public transport system up to a reasonable level of service, and that includes bus priority measures along core routes, as well as increasing frequency along those core routes and in other locations. So that is a work stream we're progressing, and we need to make sure that's integrated with MRT. So you should see an uplift in the level of service for public transport across Greater Christchurch in the next 5 or 6 years as that gets implemented, and that would include Littleton. Waikotahi, as part of its New Zealand upgrade program, is upgrading Brougham Street. So that will make it, one, more attractive for people to use as if you're in public transport, but also if you're cycling and walking, as well as providing for a good level of service for freight getting to the port. So we're aware that Littleton is the key port in the South Island, and freight needs to get to and fro there, so we are providing for that. And there's also the numerous upgrades that have been done, also as part of NZ Up, but also some of them part funded by Waikotahi to the Kiwi Rail network as well. So there is a lot of stuff happening in and around both freight and connections to Littleton. So I think you'll see an improvement over the years to come, Councillor.
Thank you, Rich. That's very clear. And a lot of stuff happening is you know, that's a good phrase. So pleasing to hear that. Cheers.
And Vic, were you looking to second it because I'm moving it?
Yes.
Yeah, right. I'm moving it. You're seconding it, and Dawn has a question.
It's just in specific to Councillor Harrison Hunt's query in relation to an addition. Oh, it's gone. And appreciating that we are a partner, City Council, Selwyn, WIMAC, ECAN and the government. The request is that staff provide advice to the Whakawhanake Kianga Committee on the addition of youth representation on the Greater Christchurch Spatial Plan Hearings Panel. Now, obviously there's been a to and fro in terms of the discussions and what was being presented as well. So I just want to be advised, Tracy, that that doesn't have a knock-on effect with our other neighbouring councils, and that we are able to give that advice in the round to everybody.
It's just in terms of how to then impact on on reversing effectively a decision made by Whakawhanake last week in terms of the composition of the panel. So I would need to have a think about that.
So that's just what I wanted to check. Yeah. So are you happy to retract it, and on the understanding that we look at every opportunity to ensure that young people are fully engaged, recognising young people came and presented to the committee and talked about different methods? I can't remember, Sarah.
Yeah,
whether
thanks,
you were
Dawn.
there at that point.
Yeah, well, in light of that, and the decision's already been made, and they're not going to be meeting again. This is sort of, it's turned to be non-eventful. So I'm quite happy to retract that, but also putting it through to Vic to just let her and the Whakawhanake Kāinga Committee know of the importance of youth representation on this,
Yes.
in terms of their voice, and for future.
So I recommend that we put a noting provision in the minutes so we've got it well noted. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. Cheers.
So we'll now go into more questions from Pauline. We're going to debate. Pauline's got debate.
Yeah, look, we should never underestimate the importance of planning, and other cities that have failed to plan have failed networks, and I think we can see that, and I'm not pointing the finger or anything, but we need to plan. And in the words of Richard, again, this work is to get us ahead of the game So we just want to be able to get around easily from a couple of destinations into the city. So, but I am concerned about the resources and the timelines here. It just seems to be, once again, the chicken and an egg thing. We know we've got a housing crisis and we're going full bore to build more houses faster everywhere, as was the intention in Plan Change 14. Yet I worry that MRT will lag behind. So it's about getting the timing right so that housing must be aligned with MRT. And I know that's the intention, but I'm not sure. We need to focus on getting that to actually work. And I'm also concerned about the time lag for the work and methodology for identifying the land development constraints and areas to protect. So I'd really like a focus on that too. It's once again, it's there, but it's the timing to do it. And by the time we get any teeth in this, it could be too late for some areas. So look, once again, this is a good plan, but it needs timelines, it needs resourcing, and it needs speed if we're going to get this right. So I will support this today, and that'll be my debate for the next one as well, so we don't need to redo that one. I'll support both. Thank you for all the work on this. It's incredible.
What made you think we were going to have debate on the second one? You fell into the trap. Mark, please.
I might lead the way.
Thank you. I, again, fully support this. I think the more planning we can do for the future of our city and the future of our environments, the better. As you would have heard in the questioning, I'm a little nervous around the timing of the MRT landing in time for the intensification to pick up the population that'll land. But I'm happy to have that noted, and I'm excited to hear that Waka Kotahi and the Greater Christchurch Partnership are looking at the idea of master planning in areas such as Hornby. It's very timely, it's overdue, I believe, and it'll be good to have that master plan discussion so that we can try and make sure that we do the absolute best we can as the spatial plan and the MRT land into the neighbourhoods. And yeah, let's get on and get this happening, I think, is pretty much where we need to be.
Okay, my 5 bobs worth. I think what Richard said is to try and retrofit it in like it's being done in Auckland is an absolute jolly nightmare. I've been up there a wee bit lately, and it's not a good look. We've got luxury of flat. It's the business case that the indicative business case that's been thrown out there is the value of dollars we get back to the dollar spent is light years ahead of the other cities. As per usual, Christchurch is a wee bit behind actually jumping on the bandwagon and saying let's doing it, but it was the work from Richard's team that crystallised it in our eyes and made us jump on the bandwagon. So it's a very long journey. I'm fully supportive of this because if we don't start, we'll never get to the end. So that's my 5 bobs worth, and Sarah, and then Kelly.
Thanks so much. And it is hard to talk about just one of these and not with the other because it is such a holistic approach. And not only is it a city shaping approach, but it's the physical environment, but it's a city shaping when it comes to us becoming a low carbon 21st century sustainable garden city, because that's what we need. We need greater density and we need really, really good public transport of different types that are suitable for the areas that they're going in. So while we've got the MRT business case here, we've also already signed off on the public transport futures and have additional funding to get that work for the areas where the MRT is not going. It is a priority to get this done really quickly. It's a really large priority to get Hornby sorted. Lots of development over there over many years without a corresponding sort of transport holistic plan that actually makes it a place that you can get around easily. I'd go to Hornby and shop in a heartbeat if there was a train to get there because the driving out there is so bad. And I think that there will be many other people as well. I'd like to commend the engagement on this, and I know that council also often gets bagged for not doing enough early engagement, but engagement on this started pre-COVID. So the Greater Christchurch 2050 work that staff have done over a number of years with a huge number of workshops, stakeholder workshops, all of those really, really good things and broad consultation then led into the Hui Hui Mai and now into the spatial plan for formal consultation. So we've had early engagement, we've had early engagement, and now we're formally consulting. And this hasn't come out of nowhere for people, which is really, really good. And I think I will leave that for now, apart from just saying that when it comes to other cities around the world that are doing this, they've seen the same thing. So Gold Coast City, which Aaron has pointed out rightly, is a really similar size to us, had fights over whether they'd put light rail in or not. Some people thought it was going to be a nightmare, change was scary, all of that kind of stuff. But it has been an overwhelming success, well past what people had expected. And it will be even easier for us to do because we're putting this in ahead of the density for the most part. So while we'll get some density to start with, we won't until it's actually in place. So that's great. Thank you.
Kelly.
Yeah, thank you. Look, I'm really excited to see this. I think it's something that's been a long time coming. I feel like this is a pivotal moment in our city's history, and we're seeing a lot of sort of change in terms of housing intensification and rapid transport. And I think that this is just going to really launch us into the future. It has been a long time coming. We've been talking about the potential for rail for a long time. I love the example of the Gold Coast, where I've been a number of times and seen how effective that system is. So really excited, really supportive of this.
Aaron?
Yeah, so I just want to start by saying that I'm a huge fan of rail and have wanted us to look into rail and get rail going again in Christchurch. I think that the heavy rail lines are a better use than the on-street stuff, just because of all of the other hazards that come with on-street, and that was sadly shown up in Sydney last week. And it happens with heavy rail as well. I mean, it's just transport everywhere. But with light rail and this particular plan, or even heavy rail, we don't have, and everyone keeps saying density, we don't have a population density that can support this in any way, shape or form. So as much as we all want to signal that we'd love to see rail, I just beg everyone in the chamber to look at comparative cities around the world and look at what actual population density is and how many people have to live near a line for it to be successful. There is no way, shape or form that this can be successful with our current numbers, even if we double or triple our numbers. Tripling would get us closer to the Gold Coast, so that would, but Christchurch people don't want to live in that denser population. So we're trying to make something happen that just can't. And then another comparative city that we compared ourselves to in the past was Portland in Oregon, which had a light rail network, which is quite successful. Their population density is 25 times that of Christchurch, and they're talking about trying to make Portland more dense. So we have to look at these numbers, and if you went and knocked on the door of every single household in Christchurch and said how many people live there, and it's on average 3, and you said you're going to have an upfront bill for light rail of $30,000 to your household, are you happy to put that on your mortgage right now? I don't think you'll get many takers, especially from those that live miles away from the line. The cost of this is horrendous. I know it's mostly government money, but that is still our money. I would rather spend that money on fixing our hospitals, our mental hospitals, and making other things for our society work, because taxpayer dollars can only ever go so far. And to spend it on this, as much as I would absolutely love it, I've gone and caught those ones in those other cities to see how well they work. I challenge everyone else to do the same, and they're still not that busy in cities that have got 20 times the population density of us. If anyone can show me numbers that this will stack up, more than happy to look at them. But so far, we're actually living in la la land. So vote for it if you will, but you're just setting ourselves up for economic failure around this. Thank you. Happy travel.
Thank you, Aaron. Andre.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just like to tautoko Councillor Peters' thoughts around and concerns around time frame. The best solution to that is that this gets cracking, gets on cracking as soon as possible. And certainly like to tautoko Councillor Harrison Hunt's thoughts around youth involvement. There are young people in school right now who will be older than there's 4 of the councillors definitely around this table by the time this is underway. So the 4 youngest here, there are young people in school right now that'll be older than us when this is built. So to have youth involvement in this process and hearing what young people want this to look like is pretty darn important in my view. So whatever can be done, I think is really important there. Thank you very much.
Jake, thank you.
Thank you. Well, unlike Councillor Kewen, I do believe the evidence and the evidential business case that actually the benefit-cost ratios really do stack up for this project, and they stack up comparatively well compared to other similar infrastructure projects across the country, and that the route is right, and that heavy rail actually isn't an appropriate treatment for this project. Look, this is a really exciting piece of work. It's a piece of work that started well before my time on this council and will extend probably well after my time on this council. Or maybe, like Yanni, I will be here when phase 1 opens. but it's not fair, he's not in the room. But look, getting visibility of this for the time I am here really is really exciting. And that's because, as has been said before, this is a city-shaping project. It'll drive our urban form and is a big part of our ambition to decarbonise our city and to make it efficient to get around. Let's not forget that cities that are easy to get around reap real economic benefit, as well as obviously the obvious social and environmental benefits. I'm also really pleased to see the investigation for potential future rapid mass transport routes is already in place before stage 1 begins, or construction on stage 1 begins. This is really important because international research shows that creating an infrastructure pipeline drives down contractor prices and provides long-term directions and certainty for our communities. To colleagues who have expressed that the route that there isn't routes planned for their communities, I would say, look, you've got to start somewhere because you can't start everywhere. So while we're not committing to this yet today, this is just a step in what I hope will be a rapid journey. And I think that actually in time, this is something that people will look back at our council and credit this council for in the Christchurch of 2080. So it's,
Thank you. Tyler?
Tēnā rā tātou katoa. I'm really excited about this plan, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it pans out in the next 50 years. I think there's a lot of promise with this, and I think it's going to put us on the map in regards to being one of the most desirable cities in our country, but hopefully in the Southern Hemisphere. That'd be fantastic. I wanted to address this youth problem that I've had, and everybody knows that this is something that I'm really passionate about. Just going back to 2019, the average elected member under the age of 40 was knocking on around under 10%. So that is a huge amount of underrepresentation for our young people. And it's up to us to actually talk and be talk on behalf of our grandchildren and our children. And when it comes to things like the Greater Christchurch Partnership, it's really important that every single one of these institutions looks at our young people and gives our young people a voice. Let me be quite clear in saying that the things that we're doing, that as old people, is what they'd call us, is serving us soup and giving them chopsticks. You know, it's exactly the same as what we're doing here. We're saying, here you go, have fun, enjoy your meal. It's ridiculous. So what I want to do, and is I want to review a lot of our policies, and I'll be doing this over the next few years, is reviewing our policies and seeing where the holes are in regards to representation. I am looking forward to seeing the Whakawhanake Kāinga Committee take into account our young people, taking into account those that don't have access to certain things. And when we're looking at markets, for example, if we look at Riverside, for example, the strip had a road going through it. It was practically dead. What we did is we chucked in amazing amenities. We chucked in all of these things right beside the riverside, and it is actually a phenomenal place for everybody from all walks of life to be able to enjoy. So when we're looking at that, we can build it, and they will come. That's exactly what's going to be happening over the next 50 years, and I'm looking forward to it. Kia ora. Thank you.
Righty-ho, Tyrone then Vic.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So I've looked at an example of a city similar to Christchurch. So it's called Auckland in the 1960s, which had a very similar population to Christchurch now and a way lower population density. and they had a mayor at the time called Dove Meyer Robinson, who had a vision for public transport in Auckland, and he was poo-pooed. And people balked at the cost of about $250 million back in the late 60s, early 70s. It was too expensive. Oh, it's not right. We just don't need it. And that is one of the totemic examples of lack of vision of public officials and elected members in this country, if not the world. It is, and we will not fall into the same trap because we've thought about this and we're getting ahead of the curve, as Richard said. So I absolutely support what we're doing, and kia ora.
Victoria.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm also really excited about this getting underway, and like Councillor Barber, I think that it is a pivotal time, and it shows that we really are maturing as a city. Unlike Councillor Harrison Hunt, I'm not sure if I'll be here in 50 years' time. But anyway, look, I note what Councillor Kewen has said in relation to viability and density, and thank you, Tyrone, for raising that in relation to Auckland. I think it is relevant. And also thank you to you, Richard, for the way in which you've responded to that, and particularly when we look at the benefit for the cost ratio. I think that's really, really valid. And also, as you said, we have to remind ourselves that this is the city shaping exercise, and we have an opportunity here to get ahead of the game. So the time is now to do that. There's lots of variables at play. There's lots of multiple work streams that are all overlapping in their programs. No doubt we have to get a really efficient, working, effective public transport network, and this is the part of this. So now is the time to get on and do this. Thank you, Councillor Harrison Hunt, for raising the issue in relation to youth. As the representative on the hearings panel, I hear that. I have confidence in the process and the other members on that panel to make sure that we're going to do that, and I commend the hard work that's already been done in relation to the engagement around this issue, and thank you to all that have been involved that are bringing this to our table, and let's get on with it. Thank you.
So with that, I will put the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against?
No.
Okay. Now, I've got to shoot out for 15 minutes, but I'll push my luck. I'm going to push my luck and do the other one while we're here. I'm happy to just move it, and Mark's happy to second it. Any questions? Because we've had them all. Any debate? Because we've had it all. Right. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Thank you. Carried. Aaron?
Yeah, mine was only the vote against the mass rapid transport. Sorry.
Roger that. Thank you, mate. Now, shall we have 10 minutes for
against the spatial plan?
We'll have 10 minutes for a cup of tea.
I found it hard to
Nearly all back. I don't know.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah.
Yep.
9. It's like counting them in like children.
We have a quorum, so we will kick
yeah.
off. We have a quorum. So we're now up.
And Aaron's on Zoom.
Are you comfortable, Jake? Checked it. Thank you. Great. That's good. Gotta be keeping. Right, so that brings us up to item 9 with the update on the Woolston Village alcohol ban and proposal for the continuation of the ban. And we've got Elizabeth and Paul. Welcome. Are you going to...
Good morning, everyone. Elizabeth Wilson from the Strategic Policy Team, and I'm sure you all know Community Board Chair Paul McMahon. Very briefly introducing this item, and then I'll hand over to Paul. Last December, Council decided to put in place a 6-month temporary alcohol ban for Woolston Village in light of the difficulties the village was encountering. And asked staff to review the effectiveness of the ban, which we have now done, and the results of that are in the report before you. Strong support for the temporary ban and some feedback also in support of making that ban permanent. So hence you've got recommendations there recommending an extension of the ban through to December so that we can consult the community specifically on that question of making the ban permanent. And we can also do the paperwork that would be required to amend the relevant bylaw, which is the mechanism we use for putting these bans in place. So that is the process. And Paul, would you like to speak to?
Kia ora koutou. Thank you. So I sort of initiated the process for getting the alcohol ban because we're having tremendous problems in our community with public drinking and lots of alcohol rubbish as well. And it's not like it's cured the problem completely, but there's been a dramatic reduction in street drinking in Woolston Village, dramatic reduction in the amount of rubbish that's been littered around, and it just feels better. And there's I dare say that the vibe has improved around the place because some people, like for instance my wife, who at times felt intimidated and harassed by people who were sitting on the street furniture drinking, that no longer is happening, and it's just really good. So thank you for the council for supporting the temporary ban initially, and it'd be great if you would support the extension and then it being made permanent. And there are a bunch of other things that are happening around the scenes to try and reduce the level of intoxication and social problems. Community agencies, we had a great meeting, which I may have mentioned last time we were here, well, the community agencies are working well together to try and help people who are particularly vulnerable. So it's really good, and this is part of helping to make Woolston a great place to work and play and live.
Well, thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Just quickly, there'll probably be some questions, but with the implementation of this ban, has there been any need for interventions by police or anything, or have people just respected it from the start?
So initially, the police take a gradual approach. They have an acronym, which I can't remember off the top of my head, that they use, but they start off by informing people and saying, look, and then they don't just come in and kick shins. Yeah. So they've only had one, I think it was one arrest, but quite a few warnings. But I was talking to one of the local bottle store owners, and is saying, look, it actually really helps their job, because when people walk out and open, which they don't encourage, they can say, look, there's a ban, you need to move on, go away. So yeah, the police are strongly supportive, and the local sergeant has really made sure that there's an increased presence around the village too. So.
That's great. Any questions, anybody? Andre?
Thank you. You may recall a number of months ago when I asked around the bench and tree outside the St John's Church. Has it led to more incidents there, or was I?
No, it's covered by, because it covers both sides of St John Street.
Yeah.
So it's still covered. So and I haven't heard any observations from the MP's office that, as you know, looks straight out down that road.
Yeah.
So from their observation, there's been a dramatic reduction in the amount of drinking on that seat, and the one on the other side of the road too.
Fantastic. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Great, Kelly.
Thanks, Paul. Totally support the extension of this ban. What's your view on extending it even further, like a city-wide ban?
Oh, a city-wide ban. I think the thing about this, because it's a bylaw, it has to be proportionate, and so there's no doubt that in places like Woolston, where there is an identifiable problem, that it is proportionate. But I think if you were to put it across the whole city, it would be harder to argue for, rather than identifying select areas. And I think we all know some of the areas that you could have bans in that would be clearly proportionate. I think you'd probably be better off going for that approach.
Thanks, Paul. That's a good answer. Are there any other questions? I call for a mover. Tyler, seconder. Kelly, is there any debate on this? Kelly.
Yeah, look, I totally support this, and I think it's incredibly important that we sort of send a message to the community that, you know, there are places that people shouldn't be drinking in public during the day in unsupervised situations where, you know, it's a bad look for our city. It's not great for the people who are there. I mean, we have a lot of regulation in our city and bars, and responsibility, host responsibility. You know, young people can drink if they're drinking at home under the supervision of their parents, yet we allow people to drink in public outside these areas that are banned. And I think, you know, it's the sort of thing that we should look at, having a citywide ban, you know, for the sake of our young people, and to send a message that New Zealand as a country is growing up. You know, that we're doing things like looking at rapid transit, we're looking at housing intensification, and I think you'd be hard pressed to find people drinking in public in a lot of other unsupervised places in around the world. So yeah, totally support this.
Thanks, Kelly. Mark.
Thank you. Yeah, I totally support this. I think putting as many tools in the toolbox for those that need to try and control this sort of antisocial behaviour is vital, and to empower the Woolston community with this for another period to get this through to a place where we can make it more permanent, I think it's a no-brainer. So let's, you know, give you the tools you need out there, and you know, keen for, as we need to, look at this anywhere else in the city that when we may come across these sort of things to try and, you know, let people know that there are times and places for drinking in public. I think generally shouldn't be, you know, encouraged, and therefore if we can have these tools to help control it, then all the better.
Thanks, Mark. Well, I'd just like to congratulate you, Paul, and your Waitai board for A, identifying the issue, and B, being proactive to do something about it, and C, taking the community with you. You've engaged really deeply into that community, and you've gained support from the right people. I mean, I kind of thought maybe some of the bottle stores might have actually objected to this, but on the contrary, they've been supportive because it's helped their business. And I think just a case-by-case, softly approach to anything talking about citywide is to be taken carefully at this stage. But I think just do it, you know, gradually, and the way you've done it is excellent. And I think you've had very good support from the staff as well to get this going. And I assume that you'll be taking on the consultation as well from this point. So it's a great partnership all round, and hard work is to be recognised, and a good result. So on that note, Tyler.
Kia ora, Paul.
Thank you.
I just want to say that you've actually set the blueprint into what it should look like, into how we address our communities at its heart. And I really appreciate yourself and the community board and the council and those stakeholders that are working together to ensure a safer community for all. We're seeing issues all around the city in regards to these behaviours, and they are taking police resources. And as we all know, that we need police resources to go towards the more serious occasions. So if we're able to stop those in a heartbeat, like you have just done, I really appreciate the work that you've done. So in that, sorry, Pauline actually took that last speech, but thank you very much, and thanks to the council for taking this on board. Kia ora.
Yeah, kia ora, well said. And with the support of the councillors, I will put... Oh, where? The little black box up there, there's a hand up in it apparently. Aaron, would you like to say something here? Sorry, Aaron.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
No, it is weird being on Zoom. No, I don't enjoy it, but I've got a sick child at home, and it would be irresponsible to send them to school. But and not from alcohol either. It's a police sickness. I do support Kelly's position on an alcohol ban citywide. I think it's saying as a city we should be exploring a mature city. There is no real benefit to people publicly drinking. We have licensed premises. You can drink at home, knock yourself out. Well, not literally, but you know, there's a lot of places you can enjoy alcohol and be social. But in streets and in parks is not one of those places, and it often goes bad. And for the people that are doing it, as well as the communities around them, and having some boundaries for these people to help steer their behaviour, I think is a good thing. So as we go forward as a mature city, I think looking into a citywide alcohol ban makes sense. It used to be the law in New Zealand. I'm not sure why it was taken away, and I'd love to see evidence of how much better off we've become by taking it away, because I'm sure that evidence doesn't exist. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Oh. Tyrone?
Just very quickly, look, thank you for all the work you've done, and I absolutely support this, but there are actually other models that work really well in the world. Like, I mean, in Germany, right? They do it so well, right? Like, and you can drink pretty much anywhere in Germany, and they have really, really good ways that they manage.
How much are the flights to get there?
But what I'm saying is, it's a horses for courses thing, and banning alcohol is not always the solution. There are actually better ways. There are different ways. There are different ways we can approach, and I just wanted to acknowledge that more than anything. That's all. Cheers.
Yeah. I'm too scared now to... All right, on that note, I will put the motion. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's carried. Well done. Thank you so much. Good work all round. That brings us to item 17.
Somebody's moving. I didn't hear who that was.
Jake's moved that already. Have you or have you not?
No, I haven't moved it. Sorry, I thought we were up to...
No, it's item 17 next.
Just got to find it.
Item 17. Sarah's happy to move.
Sarah's moved. Have you got any introductory comments? I'm just trying to find the items.
Kia ora tātou. No, I was just going to reiterate what was discussed this morning, that this is the many detailed traffic resolutions in order to legalise the lines and signs related to the scheme that was approved previously. The report doesn't propose any changes to the scheme, any substantial changes to the scheme as agreed.
Yep. Okay, so we've got a mover and a seconder. Is there any questions? Victoria?
Given that we've had some conversations around Kiwi Rail in the last couple of days, given that this is obviously work with Kiwi Rail, can you just comment on where we're at with them in terms of costings and things for these particular projects?
The costings are being discussed through the through other channels and through the annual plan process. However, part of the reason for pushing this report quickly today was because we have a window. We have two windows actually. One opening very early in June to undertake the work on the Tuckers to Barnes
to Main North
Road paths along the side of the track. So these are actually the extension of the path that goes from Northcote Road up to Sturrock Tuckers. up to Tuckers. Sorry, I'm getting myself lost. So we've got a window starting in June to do that, and we have a sufficient budget to do that. We also have a window in November, December to start on the crossings along the rest of the route, and that is where we will be discussing through the annual plan process about the extra money required. But for this project on this line, we are getting some windows and movement, so that is a real positive, and we appreciate it from Kerrywell.
Oh, excellent. All right, there's no more questions. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Opposed? That's carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right, just give me a sec to go back and find item 10 now. Christchurch Hospital, temporary easement over Hagley Park.
Happy to move.
So Aaron's moved, James has seconded. Do you have a question mark? Do you have a question mark? Are there any other questions for staff here at this point? Can I just have a second, because there was a couple that came through from Martin Meehan by an email. Have you responded to him? The question he had was the proposed path for staff appears to go through a densely treed area.
Yeah.
Is this safe, even with night lighting? And then secondly, without using the park, delivery trucks will have to reverse into the site from Hospital Bridge. Can you tell me what the process is for deliveries when utilising the park easement?
Yeah, I've got back to Martin. I mean, the proposed route through the woodland for the path is what the hospital management said is their best route for them to take, and obviously we need to make sure that it's lit appropriately, because it's they have had problems with staff being not feeling safe at night when they're leaving or coming. In terms of the movement of the vehicles, I mean, within the hospital grounds, there's a reasonable amount of space there. I don't have the full detail as to how they're going to circulate it in terms of during their construction phase, but there's been no request for bringing delivery vehicles onto council land for that area. So the exclusion that you see in there is largely for the crane, obviously, but also the other one is a fall area. So if anything were to fall off that construction site, it doesn't actually hit anybody. So that area to the left of the proposed crane site is not for any vehicles to go on there or deliveries or anything like that. As far as I know, it's purely, to make sure that if anything goes wrong, it doesn't actually endanger anybody.
Right. So you're going to address the safety through additional lighting.
Yeah, that's the proposal. That's
and then
right.
the other thing he was concerned about, will builders be using any of the available parking and reducing its availability for staff?
I mean, again, from what I can see, there seems to be activities going on in the hospital all the time in terms of changes and construction and things. I don't know the detail as to how they're going to do their parking, how that will change. Certainly the staff facilities, for the construction staff, they will be on hospital site, because initially there was a request whether they can come onto our land, and talking to the responsible manager, she's finding it within the hospital land. So they're not needing to come onto Hagley Park Botanic Gardens area.
Right, okay. Well, if we just keep an eye on that, the constraint on the parking, that would be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So if you could send a reply to Martin, that would be quite...
Yeah. No, I've sent a reply to him.
You have already?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
thank
I've
you.
replied to him yesterday.
Thank you so much. That's awesome. All right. Are there any other questions? Well, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And that brings us to item 12. 11. Oh, sorry. 11. Speeding ahead. Who's that? Sarah's moving. This is the proposed new bus stop and P3 school drop-off pickup on Barbados Street, south of Ferry Road. Welcome.
Lovely. Hi. Thanks for having us. We're here to talk about a new bus stop proposed on Barbados Street, just south of Ferry Road. The proposal includes a shelter and some P3 parking restrictions to support the school with the drop-off and pick-up. zone of their students. The reason for this recommendation is that ECAN have approved a trial to change the route that goes from Littleton to the city, and it's going to alternate between Colombo and Brougham and Ara, around Ara. And this came out of a consultation that ECAN conducted in 2022, and this bus stop supports that route change so that the students at ARA can have improved access to public transport facilities. We've met with the school and they're supportive of the changes, and ECAN are also supportive of the changes. Are there any questions?
Seconded, Tyler. Kelly, you have a question?
Can I ask it?
Yes. Oh, no. Yeah.
Oh, thanks, Pauline.
You're welcome.
Deputy Mayor. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense to me. I was trying to see the bus stops a little further to the south. Are they being taken out?
So the bus will go down Barbados and then through onto Waltham Street, and so the next bus stop is sort of...
No, sorry, maybe I haven't explained myself properly. Just further down Barbados Street, heading towards Morehouse, I noticed that there's other bus stops there.
Yes.
Yeah, so are they going to be remaining, or are they going to be turned into parking or something? Or
So at that moment, that school is relocating.
Yeah.
And we've got the... we've got another area spot for a coach bus.
Oh, okay.
And so when that school completes their relocation, we'll be looking at changing those bus stops and that coach parking and talking further to communities to see what that what the parking restrictions along that section of the road is going to look like.
Okay, thanks, mate. Cheers.
Thanks, Tim.
Yeah, as ARA would be the largest supplier of humans in the area, what was their discussion, or what was their view on it?
So ARA campaigned quite heavily with ECAN during the consultation to get the bus route through there, and also the P3 parking restrictions will make it easier for short-term parking so that students can use that during that off-peak school pickup area to access their classes. But I didn't specifically hear back from them during my consultation.
So the students, do you mean the school students or the ARA students?
ARA students,
Okay,
yeah.
cool. Thank you.
Sarah? And you want to debate? Yeah. Any other questions? A quick question, Tyrone?
Kia ora. Oh, hi, Rotani. How are you?
Thank you.
So just to clarify on when you said the school's moving, like one of the schools is moving, because there are two schools there, and only one of them is moving, and the other one's staying. So can you just clarify, like, that just, you were saying sort of there were some changes and you're like, oh, but it's okay, one of the school is moving.
Yeah.
But there are two schools, two high schools there. So is the other one, does it not matter for the other one?
So Catholic Cathedral College,
Yep.
they're very much remaining, and they're the key stakeholders where I met on site.
Yep.
And they're the adjacent property of where the bus stop and the parking restrictions will go. Further down towards, on the corner of Morehouse and Barbados, we've got Marian College of Christchurch, and they're going to be relocating. And that's the area where we've got some school bus stops and a coach bus that we'll be reviewing in the near future.
Right, so it's not going to affect Cathedral at all?
The Cathedral.
No, Cathedral College, sorry.
No.
Right, okay, that's cool. Just checking. Thank you.
Great. Good questions. All right, no more questions. Anyone like to speak to this? Sarah?
Thank you. I'm really pleased to see like a shelter going in place here, because actually waiting for the bus in the rain is really horrible and puts people off PT, which is really so good to see. And just so people know, the reason that this is alternating past Ara, although the original proposal was to have it going full-time past Ara and to switch the route completely, and I know Ara was very keen for that, but it's going to be alternating because the change would have taken it away from our Brougham Street social housing development, where there's 90 units there, and also away from South City Mall and the bus stop that most students from the southeast who are going to Hagley College get off at. And so, and many people getting on at that area as well. So for people coming into town, it won't make a difference. You just go past either of them. But it does mean that both that South City area, Brougham Street social housing and Ara all get catered for. So, so it's really cool and good to see.
Great. Mark?
Thank you. Pleased to see this sort of infrastructure going in. I think any way we can promote the use of public transport in our city is absolutely got to be supported and commended. And I think the more we can put in these sorts of shelters and stops that meet needs in the community, the better it's going to be. So that's happy to support.
Great. And of course we need bus stops outside colleges, universities and schools above all else really, and destinations like that. And also, I guess, I'm assuming, it's not a question, but I'm assuming this is a relatively easy bus shelter. Some of them are not easy to install outside residences, but they do add a lot of amenity to people waiting for the bus, as Sarah has alluded to. And that's really important if we want to make public transport attractive, comfortable and efficient. So thank you for the work on this. On that note, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Opposed? That's carried. Doing well. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just forgot to introduce Rashani sitting next to me. It's her second day as our PT coordinator.
Oh, welcome, Rashani.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Nice to see you. So we're now up to 12. Am I right there? Yes. Good. Oh, Sarah's moved. Mark, are you seconding? Are there any questions? Any debate? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? You? Pardon? You have a debate, right?
No, just only really briefly. I'm just going to abstain on this at the moment because I have issues with some delegations, so it'd be hypocritical for me to vote for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I'm with that as well at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah, there could be a notice of motion around those delegations. We're just working through that. So I think that I don't want to vote against it, but I just think that it could be cart before the horse.
So you're
So for
going
that
to
reason, abstain.
So you're abstaining. So we've got 3. Sarah, debate? Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks so much for bringing this. I know it's something that's been asked for a while. I know the number of small reports that are coming to us for things that are within that Part A Central City delegation area, like a bus stop, which are a complete no-brainer. In yellow lines, the additional reports to council, which we've all been lobbying to decrease over time. It makes sense to have these delegations go to staff for the smaller bits and pieces, and so I'm really happy to support that today.
Thank you. And this committee has existed in the past and it's worked very well. It's nimble and it's easy and it's efficient. So, and I don't think there's been any issues with it that I can recall. So I'll be supporting this today.
Aaron's got his hand up.
Oh, okay. When I think I'm getting the last word, I see Aaron's got his hand up. So Aaron, go.
Yeah, I did put up when you called for questions.
I know, but I can only see a black box. Oh, there you are. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, given that there's a number of people abstaining, I would actually move that this should be laid on the table until we have discussed those delegations further. And I've got some questions in here around some of the powers, and it's not question time. So I move that this is laid on the table to the next meeting.
You're foreshadowing that because it's already been moved and seconded.
No, it's procedural.
Annie?
Yeah.
I thought it was already moved and seconded.
Yeah, so moved and seconded, so it's in debate right now, which Aaron's just moved a procedural motion to let the item land.
Do we have a seconder for Aaron's procedural motion? Sam? Right, so I'll put that.
No debate.
I'll put that procedural motion that this is laid on the table. All those in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? In random order, I assume?
Yes, random order. So just to be clear, this is a division on the procedural motion to let the item lie on the table. As we've done previously, I'll move through this relatively slowly so we can capture this on screen as well. All right. Councillor Moore.
No.
Councillor Johansson is absent. Deputy Mayor Cotter.
No.
Councillor McClellan.
No.
Councillor Barber. Yes. Councillor Goff.
Yes.
Councillor McDonald.
Yes. I lost something in my throat. Yeah.
Councillor Kewen.
That's a yes. Sam, it sounds like you're swallowing a dead rat.
I'm used to saying no.
Councillor Fields.
No.
Councillor Henstock.
Yes.
Councillor Scandrett.
No.
Councillor Harrison Hunt.
No.
Councillor Coker.
No.
Councillor Templeton. No. Councillor Donovan.
She's not online.
That's right, she's still not on Zoom. She's absent. Councillor Peters.
No.
And the mayor is not present. It's 9 against, 5-4, with 3 absent.
So that's failed. So now I will move to the substantive, and I'll put the substantive motion. All those in... Oh, you've got debate. Yes. Sorry, Sarah, go.
Just given that quick debate, I'd just like to point out that the types of delegations that are in here that everyone can actually see, so we're actually looking at the specific delegations that people wanted to look at, are only for the Part A area on the map, and they only revolve around really, really small things. There's nothing in there that enables anyone to put in an additional cycling lane or to pedestrianise an area or anything like that. If councillors were wary, I mean, there's reporting straight to council. We could change the membership of the committee if someone who wants to keep an eye on the parking stuff in the city would like to go on the committee. All of those kind of things are completely doable. We can see the delegations in front of us. There's no need to bring those delegations back at another meeting. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. So you were the mover and you've closed. Aaron, did you have debate? What do I...
So what she's exercised her right of reply,
That's it. Yeah, sorry, Aaron.
Just vote, basically.
All right. So I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Abstention.
So Aaron's opposed, and we've got 3 abstentions. Have we got those noted?
yes, so I have an abstention from Sam, Victoria, James, and Aaron against.
Cool, thank you. And on that note, thanks, Megan. I'd like to welcome back the Mayor for the chair.
I'll leave you one bloody job. Place goes runs. No. What's all this red writing? Where are we up to, mate?
13.
13? Oh, right. Gary.
I feel privileged you've come back to the chair.
Oh, Deputy Mayor.
We're here to help.
Means it lovingly.
You can't win, can you? Sorry. Carol. So we have these 2 applications here. I know that Councillor Johansson had a question around the sea cleaners, and it was around the other providers that are providing something similar. My call into ECAN, unfortunately, the gentleman I need to talk to is away. My understanding of this group is that predominantly they are ocean cleanup. So we don't have a lot of that here. Most of our groups are concentrated on the rivers and the inner city stuff.
this has been really successful up north, and they're bringing it down. They've already been in the South Island. I just got a stat from them that said, and this is only up to the 3rd of February, so from January 1 to the 3rd of February, they've taken 64,700, and I don't know how they count litres of rubbish, but they do. No, I guess it's packed, off Canterbury beaches. So, over the year, if you multiply that up, that's a heck of a lot of rubbish. But to answer the question, I don't think there's anyone else that is doing ocean-based work like this. They use quite large boats that they got out of the America's Cup Trust up north. So, I think I can honestly say I think it's different to what else we've got. What's that one?
Sarah's happy to move it. Pauline's happy to second it. Is there any more questions? Is there any debate?
Just really quickly, just to say that sea cleaners were out on the weekend with the mother of all cleanups. They had been on the Saturday in Whakaropo, Littleton Harbour, and there's a whole pile of places that you can't just walk. So there's a whole pile of places where we have coastline where there are no tracks and no beaches. And I know that they pulled a lot of stuff out of the harbour and the coastline on those rocky points and rocky bays that people don't walk to, as well as helping out in the estuary and kayaks from the boat and stuff like that as well. So they do great work, and really pleased to be able to support them today.
Yep.
I'm happy to support this too. And I think we do often forget our foreshores and how shocking they can be, full of rubbish. And it's really, really important to get that, particularly the plastics out. So I support this being a partnership too. Nestle, surprisingly, 25,000, ECAN 30,000, and Rata is pending. So I'm hoping that our donation here of 10,000 will encourage Rata to chip in as well. And a job well done, and thanks for that evidence, Sarah. It's helpful. So I'll be supporting this today.
Yes.
Yep, and I just want to echo what Pauline and Sarah have said. I absolutely support this. There's been a huge amount of work done on the harbour health in Whakaropo, Littleton Harbour over the years, and this is a really positive step in the right direction. And just acknowledging what Sarah said, there are some bits that you just cannot get to. You've got to get on a boat, and so onwards and upwards with this one. So I'm definitely supporting it. Cheers.
Okay, so thank you very much. That was very enlightening. So I'll now put the motion. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Thank you very much. Carried. Okay, so now we're up to item 14, which is Pauline's notice of motion. And Pauline, I'd like you to present it, please.
So we'll have staff together.
Staff present it. Pauline, back it up.
Do you want to say?
Yeah, fine.
Yeah. We're here with staff advice, but that's all been provided. So
I'll present it. So this is a non-profit charitable status organisation. Obviously, we know who they are, trying to raise funds for a capital work, and they did come for a rates remission a few years ago, but that was declined. And on having another look at it after our site visit the other day, and thank you Phil and Sam for coming along. And that came up again from the group, and so we went back to staff and had a look at it, and there is a section in the criteria that says if a project is fair and equitable, if there are fair and equitable grounds, that they can have an exemption. And so this is why I've brought this up today as a way to getting this delivered, and also just that I think they deserve to have the rates that they have paid over the last few years refunded to them, and it's the amount of 6,900, I think. So I'm hoping for your support for this today, because that actually enables them to put that money towards the project, and it will be well spent on engineering advice at the moment. And they will be coming to our local community board with an update on where they're at very soon. They've got some pretty good, strong timelines established now. So this will be very helpful to them, and I think that this is the right thing to do. Thank you. So it is moved, and you have seconded it.
Yeah, I'm seconding it, yeah.
Yeah, so just from our, just to reiterate what Pauline said, they were declined because they requested it under the non-profit charitable, and the criteria is quite clear that it has to actually be, it can't be a intended public good. It has to be open to the public, so that is why it was declined quite correctly. However, as we've said, if the council supports it, they can do it under the remission 10. But staff can't do that. So,
Thank you, Leah. So I might as well put the motion. No one else has got anything to say. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you very much. Good, yeah.
Item 16.
Right, item 16. Sarah, Climate Change Portfolio Report. Forward May, yeah.
Yeah, it's got the wrong title on it. Well, the title wasn't on when I saw the draft. So this is the first of the 6 monthly portfolio reports. I won't go through all the detail, but it's clear that climate change is no longer an abstract concept that's happening somewhere else at some other time. It's here, it's now. Cyclone Gabrielle brought that all home, and the following storms as well, and it's still happening. We are in a new normal, and we need to react appropriately. So within the last 6 months, we've had the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change latest report, which is very clear, and there's a diagram from that in the report. We also just recently have the New Zealand Climate Change Commission latest set of draft emissions reduction plan for the next period. That's out for consultation at the moment, and City Council made a submission to the last one. I'm expecting us to do the same this time. That closes on the 20th of June, and like last time, I would expect that we'll be signing that off as a council rather than a staff submission. So looking forward to doing that. We had our full council induction on the actual content of the climate change kind of program, the risks, what we're all doing on the 21st of Feb, and that's still there on the big tin can. So I haven't filled the report with actual information on climate change. We've already had that. And this morning I met Lisa Early, who's the new team leader for climate resilience, who's been here 3 weeks and completes the new team, which is fantastic. I've just kind of listed the activities that I've done in my role as climate portfolio holder rather than any other work I've done as just as a regular councillor. As you always do when you write a list of stuff, I've realised afterwards I've left a couple off, but that's okay. They were just more of the diplomatic stuff with the European delegation and those kind of things. But upcoming this Friday, things that people might be interested in, the Climate Commissioner talking at the University of Canterbury this Friday, and you can go along to that. There's a 2-hour workshop looking at their latest draft advice. Otago University have also got their latest research on transport and health and city building in Tūranga this Friday afternoon. I'm having to choose between those. The School Strike for Climate will be back again on the 26th of May at 1 o'clock. And I'd invite people to come along and join that. There's nothing else in our diaries at this point. And I'm going to visit both Marion College and the Greater Hornby Residents Association in June to talk about climate change and what council's doing and how to get involved and stuff. I'd like to thank Don for his deputation earlier, and I know that no one's going to believe me, but I had nothing to do with that, and I only found out that he was coming when staff told me, so I had nothing to do with that, but it's great to see, and great to see so much passion from people submitting on our annual plan when it comes to climate change as well, because the reality is, while I hold the climate change portfolio, we are all climate change councillors. It's just like we have one government minister who's climate change, but they all need to be these days. And I still do hear occasionally, oh, we've got Sarah, she does climate. That's not good enough. We all need to be doing climate in all of our decisions. And that's kind of it. So look forward to some feedback on the report. You can just flick it through or ask questions, and we'll see where we go from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Melanie, please, and then Mark.
Thanks, Sarah, for the report. What would be good to know is what council could be doing forward that we're not already doing. So that would be something that would be good to see for future.
I think that would be good. One of the things that's just cropped up is in the audit and risk space, and I'm yet to have a conversation with the chair and bits and pieces, but it looks, I've just asked some questions about it. It looks like when it comes to some of our risk stuff, LGFA are captured by the new TCFD reporting, which is the compulsory climate risks reporting, which is meaning our key funder will be. And so we need to look at the risks coming up there.
They got Mark, yeah.
Thank you. Sarah, I just had a quick question around, I noticed in point 2 of the resolution that request from the School Strike for Climate group. Could you elaborate as to what that refers to?
Yep, so when School Strike for Climate came and they occupied the council building, which was actually very cool, and Phil came down to chat to them, which was great. Thanks for doing that. It was pretty full on. There was some very, very strong and persistent questioning. And
Baptism of fire, I'd say.
Baptism of fire, indeed. But they have 4 demands. So each time the strike happens, they have some demands of mostly of central government. Those ones this time were no new mining or exploration for fossil fuels, lowering the voting age to 16, which we've already supported as a council and written in our submission, supporting for regenerative farming, and the other one was an e-bike rebate or subsidy for low-income people. And at the time, Phil expressed support for that particular one. And I know that there's, I've got some information in the report, and there's a petition going around at the moment. So I'm just asking if we would just write to the Minister in support of that.
Okay. Tyrone, please.
Thanks, Phil. So, Sarah, thank you for the report. It's very comprehensive. The just on the Coastal Hazards Adaptation Program, do you have any thoughts on sort of the capacity of that program? I understand the team's quite small. Is there an argument to increase it substantially?
It's really clear that, I mean, we're going to be setting up the working group again today, which is really good. It's clear that we need to ramp up the work we're doing to plan for adaptation as things happen, and probably beyond coastal at some point as well, to look at all of the climate hazards, including fire and stuff as well. The team is very small, and we will have to look at whether that needs to be resourced, because we will need to we've currently started in a very small, very specific area for our adaptation planning, and we will need to ramp that up to larger areas, which will mean, I would think, more staff. Yeah.
Thank you. Kel?
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah. Just to provide some context, I know you and I have talked about our contribution as a country to carbon emissions being 0.09, but I wonder if you could just sort of expand on why it's important for us as a country to contribute to that group of nations that are tiny and somewhat insignificant.
Yeah.
It's my first question. I've got another one after that.
Okay. So I guess there's 3 key reasons why we need to play a role. The first is a leadership role. So actually, even though we're tiny, the world looks to us for leadership in a range of areas. So when we look at women's suffrage, the apartheid stuff that was happening when we were protesting there, and a range of other things where we have taken a stand and led internationally, and leadership matters. The second one is a moral argument, in that our current relatively high standard of living is off the back of greater emissions than other countries have had. So our contribution per capita to climate change for the lifestyles that we have now is greater, and yet the impact on us is lower. So third world countries, for example, who have a lot of people, will suffer the impacts even though they haven't had the emissions profile that we have. The third one is when it comes to the small countries, so countries who have a similar or even lower emissions percentage of the complete one as us. If you put the bottom 100 together, we'd be a third of all emissions. And so it does make it super clear that if we want to address climate change, we all need to work together. If New Zealand said, as our 5 million people, we're not going to do it, then that gives every 5 million person city in America, for example, the right to say, well, we're not going to do it either, we're too small. And then no one acts. So it takes all of us.
Thank you. So the second question is around the mental health of young people and their concerns about, the climate and where things are heading for them. I mean, have you any thoughts around how other than people getting engaged in plantings, etc., how young people can improve their mental health in terms of concerns about this, because I sense it's a big worry for some young people.
Climate anxiety is huge, and it's huge especially for young people because they feel powerless. They're not in a position where they can make the decisions, and they're not in the position where they have been using the carbon, if you like, that's impacted their future lives. And you can see from the graph what the temperatures could be in the future for people that are young now or yet to be born. One of the key things, there's two key things. So one is getting engaged in what they call hopeful action, and actually knowing that you're doing your bit is really important. But one of the key things I hear from young people and that I've read is that young people feel better about climate change when they know that the adults around them are making good decisions and actually acting on climate change. One of the reasons they feel really bad is that they can see people fighting against climate action and not wanting to use their political capital or resources to make the planet a better place for them in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Mark, did you have another one? Or you're done? Sorry, thank you. Pauline?
Yeah, thank you, Sarah, for this work. It's excellent. I'm just wondering, is it possible to get some more council information on how we're tracking in this report, rather than the
I would
museum?
love to. So I
Is
think
that sort of where you're heading with it?
Yeah, so the terms of reference talk about the reporting being 6 monthly and to do with the previous year's kind of achievements and challenges and that kind of stuff. And it's an awkward one to do for this particular report because at this stage we don't have a system in place to enable staff input and resourcing, if you like. So I've put in what's coming up for council, so urban tree policy, those kind of things, when we're making decisions on those. But this was a report that I had to write myself without council organisation input.
Yeah, I see.
And because I'm not operational, I don't know everything. Like I know, and I've had a quick look at the amount of work that's going into the LTP in the background, and the strategic framing for the LTP when it comes to climate. And I think one of the things is to make sure that we get regular reporting from the organisation on climate. So we had that really good induction briefing.
Yeah.
We will be getting a separate one on climate in the LTP.
So being a public-facing document here, it might be quite good just to have a smart cities link in here to make it easy for people to access that.
Yeah, I would love a smart cities link on the and a smart view link on the front page of our website.
Yeah.
There's lots of links on there. It'd be really good to have the smart view one. It's got lots of really good stuff from foraging to water
should
shutoffs.
we get staff advice on that in the resolution then?
And the other thing is a link directly to our climate stuff in the website would be a great link to have on the front page of our council website too.
Well, I see the
We
chief
did for a while.
executive's writing something down, so perhaps you've taken note of that. Yeah. And the other thing is with the e-bike subsidy.
Yep.
I'm just wondering, would that be a good remit for LGNZ? I mean, why not?
Yeah, potentially. Actually, if you're keen to do that, I'd be really happy to add that, get some advice on doing that as a remit.
Yes, could we do that, Dawn,
We just get some
please?
advice.
I don't think it's too late. Thank you, and thanks again for the report.
Thanks,
It's great.
Pauline.
Yanni?
Yeah, thank you. I see that we've made a submission to the
So the energy sector.
Yeah, it was the draft long-term electric vehicle charging strategy for Aotearoa, New Zealand. I see that you've reviewed that, but have you reviewed our own EV charging strategy? Because it's really hard to understand what we're doing. We put money on budget, the money hasn't been spent. Orion have increased the charges.
It's not something that's within the terms of reference of my portfolio, really.
Right.
I mean, it's not.
So who's got responsibility for the EV charging strategy for us in terms of council?
That's a good question.
So I've got, in the portfolio terms of reference, it is quite specific about the various strategies that I'll be giving some oversight and bits and pieces to. That wasn't one of them.
Right.
I don't think we've got a specific published strategy. There's probably an internal policy.
Can I just flag it's an area that probably needs some work? But I mean, if you did review the government strategy, did that come to us or
No, I was
Staff
I was offered the
submission or-
opportunity to have a quick review of it. It was a short submission, and yeah, but I am recommending that we sign off on the actual next emissions reduction plan submission.
So, sorry, just to be clear, is there a possible that we can
We can forward it
get a
through.
copy of what the submission was that we put in? I presume it was on behalf of council. And is there an opportunity for us to provide feedback, or is it already too late?
That was weeks ago.
Yeah, long time.
And it would be good to just
It
get
was-
clarity around our own EV charging strategy.
So one of the key things that we wrote about was equity of provision, and that was, I guess, that was probably the main point. I guess the 2.1 was equity of provision and making sure that areas that might be lower income, where people assume people won't have EVs, still get charges, because actually there's a chicken and egg situation there, where if the charges aren't there, then people don't get the EVs. And the other one was the proposal originally looked at not particularly putting it in cities, because cities would have more opportunity to, people were charging at home and not going as far, those kind of things. But with the intensification that's happening around and more people not having off-street car parking, we thought that making it clear that the intensification provisions would mean that we would need on-street charging put there in there as well. Yeah.
And Mark, you change your mind.
Yeah, thank you. I'd be really keen to see some recommendations from you on where the council can go and should go in these sorts of reports. So give us some steer would be really, really useful.
Okay,
So,
that'd be
thank
great.
you.
Yep.
Okay, and Lynn.
So,
Oh, sorry. Lynn already had the talking stick, and then you can go. Yeah. Yeah.
so I'd like to acknowledge and thank councillors for the very coherent and specific both questions and observations. This is something that we share together, and I think there is a real commitment to move forward. As Sarah mentioned, we have just appointed a new climate change team leader that completes the formation of the climate change resource within council. This will enable us to move forward in terms of both planning, monitoring and reporting in a more formal way. So what I'd be very happy to do is take on board all of the suggestions that have been made around the table, and to ensure that we come back to council in the near future. I'm not going to put a specific date on it, but with how we're intending to report going forward. And in particular, I think we could make more of a showcase of some of the underpinnings of the long-term plan, and also the reporting against climate resilience goals, which will come through all council reports going forward. So we are definitely committed to making that step change. It is a complex area, so it does require a wide range of collaboration, both council and staff and government. And we look forward to improving the way in which we're approaching this in the coming months.
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, thank you. An outstanding report, Sarah. And you've done it yourself, so it is really, really good. And I envy the ability to do that. I'd have lots of pictures, but we won't go there. Yeah, just following along with recommendation 3, which I really like, because it's going along the lines of cars, because we have car share, we have a government subsidy on electric cars, so I totally get that, and it's great. The one thing, and you won't be surprised by this, is I keep banging on about copper brake pads and treating metal at the point of when it leaves the factory, rather than letting communities and councils having to pick up the pieces through a number of processes. And smaller councils will be absolutely stuffed. They just don't have the capacity we do. So I'm just wondering how we can get kind of more traction with that, because like 10 years of Hastings Wakatahi, they suddenly come into slow speeds at schools and slow communities, which has been 22-3 decades behind the rest of the world. And it's not a political thing, it's just somehow the boffins and behind the scenes in Wellington just don't get it.
Yeah.
So California but Germany, right across the world, they banned them. Why? How do we get some friction there.
Yeah, I don't know. I think in the past we've done like a remit to LGNZ on the copper brake pads, those kind of things. We've raised it as an issue. It doesn't really fit under the climate portfolio specifically. There'll be more water quality and broader environmental stuff, sustainability. I mean, everything's kind of linked, but yeah, but it's definitely something that needs work. Yeah.
Look, fantastic piece of work. Thank you.
Okay, so I would suggest that.
I'm happy to move it.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see your hand waving there.
Sorry, it was a late run. Thank you, Sarah, for putting this together. I think it's really important that we have visibility, and I take your point that this is across council and all lines of work. I guess two things I'm interested in getting a bit more information is around looking at, particularly around the equity lens in terms of making sure that we prioritise, because we only have, in terms of our capital program, where we're making sure that we've got infrastructure in place so that people can reduce their emissions. So looking at where there are gaps in the network, it could be around cycling, it could be other things. The second one I'm really interested in is around innovation. And looking at where the opportunities are, because we can be leaders in terms of building into our organisation ways of demonstrating that we want to be at the forefront of developing things that will build climate resilience into our communities. So I think that the climate adaptation program that we're rolling out in Whakaropo Harbour is a good example of where we're being leaders. I also think that there's an opportunity through Christchurch and Z would be really interesting to see how we can look at doing some work there, and also through the Smart Cities team. I know there's some work underway, but interested to hear more about where the opportunities are as well to be leaders in that space. So really appreciate you writing this report and bringing it to us.
So I assume Sarah will move. And I am thinking that Celeste will second it. Do we have any debate? No, I'll put the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Thank you. Okay, thank you, Aaron. Carried.
That was a no. That was a no from Aaron.
Yeah.
Aaron, yeah, got it. It was more than one, no.
Oh, I only heard one.
It was one no or two no's. Yeah, Aaron, got it.
It'll be the e-bike subsidy.
Oh. Right, we'll move on to item 18, my mayor's report. If anyone's got any questions, it's been tabled, have a look. There are some interesting things happening in town. I'm actually going up to meet with the people from China Southern Air very shortly to have a wee chit chat to them. So there's lots of interesting things happening that's going to make our city even better than it already is. So I'll move it and Tim will second it. Any debate or discussion? Yanni, please, and then Mel.
Yeah, thank you. Given what's happened with the draft decision to reject our exemptions, I thought it would probably be good that we formalise our concern as a collective and write to the Minister of Local Government. So I just drafted a few resolutions which I sent round, but I would like us to express significant concern to Mata Arawai's draft decision to decline Council's application for an exemption in regards to chlorinating our drinking water supply. I'd like to note that the Council has worked in good faith, invested millions of dollars and devoted extensive resources to keeping our drinking water safe while working towards meeting the new standards on the basis that we'd have an ability to get an exemption, and that we write to the Minister of Local Government seeking a meeting to outline the concerns with the process to date, the lack of genuine partnership, and seeking a way forward to amend the exemption process so that it is more achievable and realistic rather than being impossible to meet. So I just think it's important as a collective that we do place on record our concern and we formalise that with some resolutions. I appreciate that you've written a letter, but yeah, I note that other councils may wish to, put other amendments to that or revise it, but I just thought it would be good for us to do something as a collective given the very disappointing news that we've heard last night.
Councillor Johansson, can you actually send them to us, please, because we haven't got them? Yeah, we need to read them. Members need to read them.
But more or less everything you've just said was covered in the letter.
Yeah.
But I wrote it on behalf of everyone.
Could we ratify your letter then and have a formal record of a collective disappointment?
Can do. Can we? I don't know.
Well, you can do if we can get the recommendations and we can agree.
Yeah, are you firing those through now, Yanni?
Myself.
Is it-
I'm sending you an email now, so you have my email address.
So Yanni's saying, could we ratify your letter? Does that mean table it and agree with it today as a collective? Is that what you're asking for, Yanni?
It's sort of inherent, isn't it, when the mayor writes on behalf of us?
I'm a bit lost, to be honest.
Yeah.
Don't pull me out of this.
Well, the mayor has written on behalf of the council. Councillor Johansson is asking that is formally noted, but he had a whole series of other things as well. But
Yep.
This is.
No.
Have you got it yet? No. Okay. Whilst we're getting around that, is there anything other questions that anyone would like to talk? Yeah, Jake, please. Then Tim.
Could I ask that 3B be put separately?
Yeah, and sorry, the key point I was making was we write to the Minister of Local Government. We've written to Mata Arawai, but we haven't actually written to the Minister of Local Government, have we?
No.
No.
Right. So.
But I can do that.
Yeah. Well, it'd be good to formalise that.
I can more or less resend the exact same letter. I've no issues with that. So would that make you happy, Yanni?
Yeah, well, be good. Yeah, we could formalise the two letters.
So these are Yanni's, Councillor Johansson's amendments.
Like I said, I'm happy for them to be tweaked to something that supports what you've already done.
Yeah, it's I wouldn't say it's word for word, but it's very, very close to what I've said, isn't it? I'll get you a copy of that and show it to you if you like, Yanni.
I've got the letter here.
To fully conclude in some way what,
So I'm just a bit. So we all agreed that the letter was sent, and we've seen the letter. So what are we just
formally as a collective endorsing the letter that's been sent and sending a new letter to the Minister of Local Government, expressing the similar concerns.
Okay.
Basically.
Yep.
So there's an opportunity here that you could add an additional recommendation to the Mayor's report in terms of the recs in item 2, whereby Council endorses the letter that the Mayor sent yesterday and that the letter is sent to the Minister for Local Government, and I think that will probably cover both things off there.
That'll sort both them out. Yep.
Yeah. And can I just one question not related to this was around the Merrill Forum. How's the funding for the regional funding for the stadium going? Has that been discussed at the Merrill Forum, or is there a process to do that?
I'll just speak on behalf of Leah because she's not in the room. So there has been some discussion with ECAN around getting a oral update at the CEO's forum, which I think is June, and then on potentially on from that to the Mayoral Forum.
That answer your question, mate?
Yeah.
All right. So we have number 4 coming up, have we? Here we go. Sorry, Tim, did you have something else to say?
The Chief Executive to Mata Arawai. We can tidy of the regulator if you would prefer to do that.
Any other discussion or questions on what's in the Mayor's report and the Coastal Hazards Working Group stuff? Everyone happy? Yeah, that's right. Well, we're catching up, yeah.
It was going to be in debate, but we're sitting here twiddling our thumbs, so I just thought of time efficiency, so if you're happy. I just want to thank the Mayor for coming out. I took the Mayor around, I know others have done it around the Kashmir ward, and it's just really nice to make those connections, and especially at the South Library, just to talk with the staff there and see what they're putting up with, etc. And we did that with the Health and Safety Wellbeing Committee, with Dawn and myself and the team. So I just wanted to thank Phil for that. It's really nice making those connections with some of the key clubs and individuals. So thank you very much for that. And on their behalf, they just wanted me to pass that on. So thank you.
You're welcome. And I have done it with Mark out to Hornby as well. And anyone that wants me to, it's probably one Friday a month or a Friday afternoon every couple of weeks, grab me, or grab Ruth and say, oi, I want Phil out to come and yarn to people and just take me around and show me what's going on in your hood. So more than happy to do that. Thank you, Tim.
Much appreciated, mate.
Pauline?
It's called trotting them out.
No, I've already been to the Edgeworth, Paul. Thanks very much.
No, I want you to come and look at the community centre next, though, so I'll book you and thank you. I just want to give a shout out to Marie Polisco for putting her hand up to join the Salwa-Waihora Zone Committee as a liaison for council, because it is a reasonably chunky role that on the zone committees, and I think it's really cool that a community board member has stepped up. We did have Emma Norrish on the Christchurch West Melton one last year, but the Salwa-Waihora is a tricky one for us to get to because of time commitments, and so I thank her for stepping up and doing that for us. Just wanted that noted.
Yeah, well said, thank you. Anyone, Melanie, please.
Yeah, I'm really pleased the Coastal Hazards Working Group is being re-established. I enjoyed being on that last term, and I think it will be good to be progressing that.
Mm-hmm.
With the Health, Safety and Wellbeing Committee, looking at the membership there, I just note it's all males, and I'm not quite sure that that's actually, it's not representative. So I'm just, that's a question and a point. Anyway.
Right. Okay. So do you want us to? You're just saying. Okay. Go, Sam.
Unless I'm getting the menu, I think Jake mentioned before putting Aaron's appointment separately. So I mean, if people are going to do that, I would hope they've got an alternate solution in the event that it fails. So, yeah. I mean, it just seems unusual that you'd be against someone but not put someone up with a solution.
Yeah.
As the chair of the committee, is there an issue with this? And I would have liked someone to, if you've got issues, to come to. I mean, it's like my door's always open. I actually don't have a door, so it's even easier. But it's a bit of a surprise, to be quite honest. But I don't want to go there. I don't think it's. I think if we've got an issue, then it'd be really good to discuss it, or it'd be really nice to discuss with the chair, perhaps, and deputy chair.
And last time, health and safety was all us, yeah, all males. It seemed to work right everywhere. And everyone's got a problem with it. I'm more than happy to stick your hand up. Anyone who wants to do it instead. I just talked to Aaron, and he said he was keen to do it.
And as it's health.
I think, look, if anyone wants to, they're certainly more than welcome to. But I think this sometimes illustrates the frustration around diversity. We all agree that it's a good thing, but it becomes very difficult if other people then aren't putting their hand up to rectify it. So I think that everyone is open to it, and I think that we agree that diversity adds value. But if the pool isn't there, or there isn't the desire from those diverse groups to do it, we're left in a bind, and it's not ideal, but it's the situation that we find ourselves in. So happy if someone would like to put up an alternative, then we'll consider that.
Okay, Aaron, you're the man in the middle.
Oh, well, not yet. I
also, the point Melanie raised is quite a good one. So I'm more than happy to let one of the female councillors take a lead on this. Yeah, well, I think that's a good idea.
Okay, which brings us round. We have three female councillors who've all got their hand up, for one reason or another.
You've got three options.
I'd like to nominate Melanie for this, if you're happy for that.
Okay, if Melanie wants to, she can do it. Melanie wants to? Everybody's happy? Aaron's happy?
We double check with Aaron because I'm fine with that.
And I'd echo that.
Yeah, I was just looking, to be fair, I was looking at workload. That's what I was looking at. Okay?
I don't think you have to worry about that so much. Good at multitasking.
And that's where I was coming from. And like you ladies have all got a fair bit on your plate, but if Melanie wants to do it, that's fine, and I don't think Aaron's going to lose any sleep over it. So can we change that name, which we already have? This is very good.
I'm also wide open, typically.
I thought you were putting your name up to do it.
I mean, Melanie's more than capable of doing it. I'm happy to also join.
All right. Okay, we'll talk long enough. So we've got a mover and a seconder. Is there any more debate? Yanni, please.
Just two quick things.
Oh, sorry, I've got to ask for a mover and seconder. Are Tim and I happy with number 4 that Yanni's put up?
Well, it's just, you probably just need to send us a separate letter with a copy because you need to give a bit more context. The letter to Tamata Arawai is actually very specific. So just sending it to local government minister probably doesn't capture the extent of concern. I think you just need to, send a letter to the Minister of Local Government with a copy attached.
Yep, we can do that. Yep.
Okay. And just the only other question I wanted to ask was around Otakaro Orchard. Thank you for going and visit. Amazing place. Is there anything that was raised in terms of what we can do to support it, either funding, just to help get it finalised? Because I'm just aware that they've come to us before. It's something that I think is really cool, and you probably got that from your visit. But I'm just confused about if we wanted to support it, what can we do?
You're dead right. There was a method to their madness of dragging Sam, I, and Pauline round there. What they have done with the little bit of money they've had and the building that they've done to this point is absolutely phenomenal. It is really good. They are, correct me if I'm wrong, $250,000 short, aren't they, Pauline? Around that figure. And what they've done, they've got a whole lot of kitchen stuff they were moving in there from that they'd been given by the museum. That they're doing it on the smell of an oily rag, but they're doing a real Haley, and there's a guy around there. I can't remember his name. Lovely guy. Yeah. Great guy. And they're so close to being finished. So anything that we can do to help them get over the line, otherwise it'll take years. So Pauline and I have got a cunning plan to try and get them some money to get them over the line, because that is right by the new bridge. Yep. It's right by where you can get onto the punts on the Avon. It's going to be a great place for cycleway to go past and have coffee. They're going to have a coffee shop out the front. It's going to be outstanding. So the more we can help them to get across the line, to get started, they'll be away laughing. So I take on what you're saying.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm happy with number 4. Are you happy with number 4, Tim? Okay. So I will put the motion. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Thank you. That's carried. Good.
Move to resolution to PX.
Yep. Okay. We will now move into PX and resolve to exclude the public and set out on pages 51 and 52 of the second open supplementary agenda. Thank you very much. And the mover is Sam and the seconder is Mark.